Hello everybody out there in comic book land. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don, and if you're listening to this, you can only be here for one reason, and that's a brand new episode of the Major Issues Podcast, brought to you by Comic Book Clique. And as you know, I am never alone. Sir, please introduce yourself.
I'm Peter Melnick of the Marvelists.
Yes, Peter Melnick is here in studio, and guess what? We have a special guest here. Ma'am, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Dalin, Rowell, and I'm a writer and contributor for a lot of websites like /film, LairdMolton.com, and my own website, MagicalEmote.com.
Dalin is here, Peter is here, and we are here to take a trip to hell because HellBoy is right around the corner. So we thought we couldn't do anything better but try to take a deep dive into all things HellBoy, really talk about Big Red.
I thought I was going back to college because you're going back to hell. I'm like, oh no.
No, I mean it's all pretty similar. But I guess we should just get right into it. What were you guys' first impressions of HellBoy, and how did you first hear about the character?
So I guess I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead.
So I came to know about HellBoy actually through discovering Mike Mignola.
Okay.
The main reason or way that I discovered Mike is through the movie Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which is a Disney movie.
Right.
Mike was the character designer and concept, person that they went to for concept designs for the movie. Mm-hmm. Because if you watch a lot of the movie, the hand designs of the characters all are very Mignola-ish. Yeah. And he was definitely like a conceptual artist when it came to like the set designs and like a bunch of other stuff. So as a little kid, or 10 or 11, I was like, what? What's this stuff? This guy. They keep mentioning him in the behind the scenes stuff. I gotta figure out who this is. So I ended up then looking into his work, and I found HellBoy, and I was just like, this is so cool. But then it became 2004 and the movie was going to come out. So I decided, all right, I gotta get into the HellBoy zone. And then I was just like, this is my love.
Did you get a gigantic red hand?
I wish I had a gigantic red hand.
You just took a Hulk hand and painted it red.
So did you know a lot about the character prior to the 2004 movie? Were you gearing in?
I did.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did that make the experience more enjoyable?
Yeah, well, when we get into talking about the movie, I definitely want to dive into what it was like, because trust me, in 2004, 13 to /14-year-old me
awesome,
was very whoa, this is a lot for me to process. I have a lot of teenage feelings going on right now.
Right.
And I love the source material just because I love monsters and I love, weird religious cult stories, but I also love mythology and folklore. So I definitely was already hooked into the world of HellBoy immediately. And also wartime stories and Nazi insanity is I'm also into. So yeah, all that stuff I was immediately into it.
Yeah, they tie a lot of real historical elements, events, and like you said, a lot of old folklore across different countries and religions. Were you a fan of the comics going in, Pete, or do you think you got in with the film?
So I got in first through the film, and I remember when the movie came out. It was 2004, right?
Yeah,
2004. DVD comes out, and my mom was heavily into first off just getting DVDs in general. It was always a recurring trip to Best Buy and picking up stuff. And I remember when the movie came out, I didn't know about it in theaters. I never got to see any of the trailers, never saw any of it.
Okay.
And she was like, oh, it's hell. It's horror. I'm going to watch that thing.
Right.
So I'm watching it because she's watching it. I'm like, wow, this is good.
Right.
Oh, holy hell, this is good. No pun intended.
Right.
But, I was getting into it through that way. And then it didn't happen until a few more years later. I'm in college getting back into comics. And I remember my friend Paul, and he was heavily into that because of the art style, the thick lines, and just Mignola's style, which, by the way, people look at his names written. It's not Mignola, we've been saying. It's Mignola.
Yeah.
Mignola.
The idea of that style, that attracted me because I'm a big, Jack Kirby fan, and his style borrows heavily from Jack Kirby's art style, with very square shapes, blockiness.
Yeah.
But in a good way. It's not, bad blocky, it's good blocky.
But also pronounced negative space.
Exactly.
And use of color and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it might have been Seed of Destruction, but he actually dedicated one of those books to Kirby.
Yeah.
Because that was around the time Kirby passed in 94.
Yeah. And so early on, he already dedicated that to one of his influences. And yeah, getting into the comic book, those shadows, man.
I know.
Those shadows, like, it's almost more about the black in every image than it is about the color. And majority of those pages being so dark, it speaks to the gothic nature of a lot of those stories that they tell.
Does,
Very Lovecraftian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was right up Del Toro's alley, but I will get into that.
Yeah.
Let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty when it comes to the character. So
actually, I wanted to rewind real quick. You mentioned about shadows. Personally, the color for Mignola's work is like what really attracts me. I love like the flat colors because there's a lot of artists out there that do, very digital, like 3D-ish kind of color. Like I'm going through the Brian Michael Bendis run of New Avengers, and I just did, took a little detour into Mark Millar's Civil War.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a lot of 3D-ish coloring. Like you have the shading and all that. Mignola's work would not benefit from that. It would benefit from the flat colors. And ironically, there's another artist, a very big name, Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Frank's art should not have that, glossy kind of color to it, shiny or whatever. It should be flat colors, just like Mignola.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember, like, what I think of when I think of that are his eyes. HellBoy's eyes, those flat, yellow, sometimes in the shadows, that's all you see.
Yeah.
And same thing with, we'll get into it with him too, Lobster Johnson. His goggles, just those orange circles in the distance. And like I said, no shadow, no gradients, or anything else like that, or highlights.
Yeah.
But just you can still feel them glowing in the distance, even though there is no special, artistic influence placed on those things.
Yeah.
So I thought, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you can also tell that like there's moments where Mignola is so good at choosing when the eyes are shown.
Yeah,
like it's not just like like every panel gonna just like have you have that emotional connection to the character.
Those eyes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he chooses the right moments that really affect the character and allow you to be like into his like soul and
exactly find kind of his mind state and stuff. And because it still finds way to be very expressive even with the minimal changes that he does, or where he chooses to focus. Because a lot of this time, then, this is what drew me to comic books in general, is that this is directing. This is, storyboarding. This is, he's picking and choosing these shots, quote unquote, for his movie. Yeah. And so every one of them is important. This is his director's cut. And he writes and draws for this. So this is all.
Yeah. Well, not in the first couple of issues.
Was that John Byrne?
Yeah, yes. I think so. Yeah.
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 You got burned.
Yeah. But you don't want to get burned.
Well, you could definitely tell, like, when the comics initially started, especially with Seed of Destruction, that, like, this was very much not Mignola's way of storytelling, because there's a lot of moments where like you hear HellBoy's narration and what he's thinking, and there's lots of kapow and moments of action that are audibly written, right? But in the other comics, slowly it just becomes this more moody, like atmospheric style that Mignola is more interested in, where he just shows panels and you don't need to hear like the pow and the sounds and the wing zoom of it all. It's more just about like seeing the character be in this very creepy, atmospheric, calm, chill environment that's terrifying in a lot of ways.
I feel like that way of storytelling almost it gives you a sense that everything has been there.
Yeah.
Like every place he's visited has always been there. And HellBoy himself, we'll get into his origins in a bit, but he's always been here in a way, And so a lot of what you see with the character is this level of like being nonchalant to everything, where a lot of what he sees you should be screaming your head off for. Him seeing himself in the mirror, sometimes you probably should be screaming your head off. But he's done it. He's done it all. He's been through it all. He's done it all.
He's a war-torn veteran, dude. Like he just doesn't care.
He's definitely gone through it. But HellBoy, aka, and let me know if I'm saying this right, Anung Unrama?
It is
WrestleMania.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, no, it's Anung Unrama.
Anung Unrama. Or Big Red.
Or Hurricanrana.
Created by Mike Mignola, like a filet mignon.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Like a fine steak.
Yeah, the cheese a little silent.
That's it.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Mignola.
A little bit softer now.
That's it. He first appeared in San Diego Comic-Con Comics, issue number 2, where they had a little short story about him, but his biggest story, or his biggest introduction, comes into that Seed of Evil story that we were talking about, where our boy HellBoy was summoned from hell to Earth as a baby on October 5th. by Nazi occultists. We see our man Rasputin
yes
working with the Nazis. They've hired him. It's gotten to the point where the war is just so unpredictable that they now are going to the occult.
Yeah.
Screw it.
Why not?
Yeah, you understand? We're hedging our bets. If it's not going to work in this plane, it's probably working the next.
I mean, to me, I think if you're going to marry two incredible evils, why not put Rasputin with the Third Reich? You know?
Understand?
Like,
and so, like you were saying before, you get a little bit of this aspect of Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah.
Where you have this ancient evil. Well, I guess not that ancient. It's not. You haven't been 100 years yet, but a historical evil. A historical evil, and then Rasputin, man. What was it? Shot, stabbed, castrated, drowned.
Yeah.
A man with
a bad noogie.
Yeah, a man with a bone to pick. He gave him a wedgie, a swirly, and then they killed him.
Yeah. Well, Rasputin, was like a man of like politics and, in the midst of like this insanity with the, Russian Revolution and all this stuff. So it makes sense, like out of all of the historical figures, he would also be the one that's like low-key a warlock.
Yeah.
Would be like, I want to summon that demonic shit. Yeah.
Right. And so he comes and he's using a combination of technology and magic.
Yes.
Opens up a portal to what he thinks is going to help not only himself but the Nazis win this war. I gotta remember the name. He believes that he's going to try to unleash the Agdru Jihad.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
The 7-headed dragon of I think it's down around here somewhere.
The Agdru Jihad.
Yeah, Agdru Jihad. Yeah, so it's 7-headed dragon of Revelation times.
Yeah.
That will come, and this threat of this dragon, this Cthulhu-like beast, is literally in every story everywhere, because we find out that HellBoy, who was summoned by Rasputin in this experiment with the Third Reich, his right hand is the key to opening up the gateway to let this dragon in to do all kinds of horribleness.
Yeah, well, in the comics, one of the things that's like really interesting to think about is that this right hand is actually not something that was literally only made for him.
Yeah.
Like this was created by a greater spirit. I believe his name was Anum.
Yeah, he was an angel, yeah.
Yeah, and he essentially was like, well, I'm one of these greater spirits who's here to watch over Earth. I'm just gonna make these like creepy dragons.
Just in case,
see what happens. And the other spirits were like infusing powers in it, but the ones that were good were like, Anon, like I don't know if this is like a great idea for you to be doing this. And they actually got really mad at him because these dragons, who were essentially the first like specimen or creation of Earth ever, essentially are also the key to destroying Earth.
Right.
So therefore, they're not really doing any good existing.
Yep.
So, having this hand that's essentially the key to unlocking them was never something that was directly meant for HellBoy. But his dad, who is also a demon, was
Azrael, right?
Yeah, Azrael. Yeah, was just like, you know what, buddy.
Yeah, he
cut your hand.
He cuts off his son's hand.
Yeah,
grabs this hand of Anon, this angel or demonic angel in some cases.
Yeah.
Keeping it safe. It's almost like when you see the whole handcuffing yourself to the suitcase kind of situation.
Yeah,
the nuclear football kind of deal.
Oh my god.
And so, do you trust this child? This small? I mean, this is a big responsibility, right? To put this thing on this.
Well,
boy.
For a child, with great power comes great responsibility.
That's
and,
true.
You have a spider involved and spandex, but at the end of the day, it's a franchise.
Yeah,
that's true. And we have to be Bonesaw first. Everyone knows you got to make
Bonesaw is ready.
Bonesaw is always ready. That's that's what people need to remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, although right where he was at, Rasputin's experiment seems to not work.
Right.
So the Nazis are all like, bro, we want our money back. This is not how we thought this was gonna work. But over where Professor Broom is, along with his fellow members of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, BPRD, a portal does open and HellBoy does arrive. And even though he's clouded in fire, it's actually very similar to there's a panel in Daredevil Born Again.
Yeah.
Where he's shrouded in the fire. In the same sense, you have this little devil child. Yeah. And you can already tell that there's something kind of big on his hand. And I think in the film, I'm not too sure they do it in the comic. They're like, oh, he's got a weapon or something. He's got a rock.
No, he already, like, literally from the moment he was born, his dad, like, chopped off his right hand and put this giant clay stone key on him. So even as a little baby, he had it too. Yeah.
So back in the day, this was, I want to say, on a Thursday, but it was back in the day. There was a tweet that I had sent through my old partner from Audible Exquisite, Mike Noren. He asked, with that big, gigantic rock hand, how does he even get the jacket on?
Oh yeah, that is.
Yeah, right? No, it is true. But I think I always like to think that if you look at the way that HellBoy's drawn, right, he definitely has a very, like, I want to say, like, very baggy.
Yeah, like
sleeve.
Billowy. They're like billowy.
Right. And if the BPRD has been making jackets for him since 1945, right? Then they're just like, well, we're just gonna oversize the trench coat, like, no biggie. Yeah.
In the interest of fairness, we did get an answer.
Oh.
Mignola told us the magic of comic books.
I was gonna ask, is the jacket canonically fireproof?
I believe so.
Yeah, right.
Well, knowing the BPRD, they're people that think through all these things. They're, people that deal with fairies, with witches and goblins. So I think they would make Baba Yaga. I believe they would make a fireproof coat. So
let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that has a lot to do with the HellBoy mythos. Let's talk a little bit about the BPRD, this Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. A lot of comparisons people make to Men in Black.
Yes.
And I don't know, is that a fair comparison to make? Is that sliding one to
Yeah. So in my personal opinion, I guess we could get a little bit into the conversation of the movies, just a small bit.
Sure.
I was very frustrated watching the first movie, as much as I love it, that, it was created in a time where MIB was such a big deal, right? And for a lot of film-going audiences, the way for them to understand a strange, like, paranormal, like, group that works and fights, aliens and whatnot, was to make it just like MIB. It's secret, it's underground, it has, like, this slick kind of matrixy design, right? But in the comics, the BPRD isn't like that. The BPRD is boardrooms with, giant, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, presentations with, like, PowerPoint presentations, but they're like, all right, we're going to talk about the history of, blah, blah, blah thing that happened in 1944. Here's all the slideshow pictures. Click, click, click. Like, there's none of this, like, technological, like, here's a button where you can erase people's memories. Right. None of that stuff. It's not this beautiful, like, well, it is beautiful in a way, but it's not this very shiny, glossy, sleek, 90s sort of thing.
Oh, the 90s.
Yeah, right. And as much as I love that sort of aesthetic that MIB has, the BPRD isn't like that. The BPRD is homegrown, like, it's hidden, but it's also about the rustic, hard, like, aged nature of everything. That
almost reminds me of how a lot of people ended up taking Suicide Squad. They say that Suicide Squad took a lot of influence, bad or good, from Guardians. Like, Guardians comes out, introduces a whole team, uses music to its motif, but then they took all the good things about Guardians and just shoved it in our faces, and it's like, well, they're not the same.
Right,
so I think on the topic of Guardians, obviously, because as Star-Lord himself,
resident,
the funniest thing about that movie is I feel like Margot Robbie has in her clause, and like at least from 2016 until 2017 or 15 to 17, every movie she did had to have Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. Because when 2018 happened, I'm like, well, is the favorite going to have Spirit in the Sky? Because it always has to have that. Like, they're borrowing that from Guardians, and then, like, well, what is it going to be this year?
Do you mean Mary Queen of Scots? Because she was in that, not in the favorite.
I thought she was in.
No, she's not in the favorite. I thought
Mary Queen of Scots was the sequel to the favorite.
That's okay. That's right. See, that's why I consider myself the weirdo, because I'm the one who loves, like, all the period costume dramas and stuff. That's my MCU.
But that also speaks to this, because this marries both, right? Yes. Because with your historical knowledge, you get into Hellboy, and for them to be pulling out Arthurian tales and tales of all these other big historical moments in history and historical people like the Baba Yaga. Like that's something that you can read in books and do your research on.
And it's funny because those characters are linked into HellBoy, and those historical figures. HellBoy is also linked to other comic book properties from other companies.
I've heard this.
So I'm a big Eric Larson fan, and Savage Dragon is my jam. Right. I love old Finhead. And he was crossed over. Is it canon anymore? We don't know. It's comics,
what's
whatever.
canon anymore?
Yeah.
But put that on a shirt.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hashtag.
Yeah, what's canon anymore?
He did, issues of Savage Dragon where HellBoy shows up.
Uh-huh.
And in the Savage Dragon universe, he's also teamed up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. On the other side, HellBoy has teamed up with Batman. He's teamed up with Starman. Yeah. So this is a whole universe where all of those characters are mishmashed together.
Yeah.
And then when you really think about it, okay, so you have Batman teaming up with HellBoy. Batman's teamed up with the Power Rangers.
Yep.
So this is a universe where screw it, continuity's out the window.
The 6 degrees of separation is amazing in this universe.
And with HellBoy being in Injustice.
Oh yeah, what a bump up there.
Do you realize we live in a world, they live in a world where HellBoy coexists with Rasputin, the Power Rangers.
Ninja Turtles.
Yep, Ninja Turtles. And those guys, some of those guys went and fought in Mortal Kombat. You understand? Mm-hmm. They've gotten crossovers over there.
Johnny Cage.
Yeah, you understand? All this entire world is connected together.
Hashtag it's all connected, just not in the MCU.
Yeah. But actually, going back to the BPRD for a second, one of the things that I absolutely love about the BPRD is they are not a organization that's about looking cool.
Right.
And that I feel like there's so much of this kind of pressure for all of a lot of comic book or just nerd properties in general to have these secret organizations that are like incredibly badass, like Hydra. Shields or like, MIB or any of these things.
Hydra.
Or Hydra.
Yeah. When you start talking about like the Illuminati and stuff like that.
Where they have to be necessarily intimidating.
Yeah.
And the BPRD isn't intimidating.
No.
Like there are intimidating members within it, but a lot of them are just kind of regular people that are just trying to live their lives, or regular monsters who are just trying to live their lives, like especially like when we get more into members aside from HellBoy and Lobster Johnson, when you think about Liz Sherman and Kate Corrigan and
Abe Sapien,
my boy, and Roger, and so many of them are just trying to live their lives, and this is just their job.
I'm a swamp monster who has to pay his taxes too. Damn it.
That's it. And I mean, it's in the name Bureau, so it's literally the unglossy side of things. This is the bureaucracy side of things. It's
I love it.
And what I dug, and I don't know if I seen a little bit in the movie. I'm not too sure how much of the comics borrow from this or vice versa.
Right.
But the idea that these agents, while they are beloved characters, are kind of expendable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like this idea, it adds to the realism of the dangers of things. All our X-Men come back for the most part. All our Avengers come back for the most part. So BPRD comes, and sometimes they lose 3 or 4 people, and that's just what happened that day.
Yeah.
And I thought that that added a lot to the realism there.
Yeah, no, and especially that, they're doing their job, and part of that job is people dying.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that they're just like, oh, they'll come back. It'll be fine. Like let's put rose-colored shades over everything.
Yeah.
This is real life.
Yeah.
And as much as we love like the hyper fantasy of HellBoy, there's a groundedness in reality that this is just what's going to happen. People are going to die, including characters that are the title character of the series.
He will literally go to hell.
Yeah, and that there are going to be a separation. The BPRD comic book series didn't really start out of just, the popularity of the characters. It was because HellBoy was like, guys, I gotta go on my own little solo trip.
Yeah, he quits.
Yeah, I don't need to be with you guys. Like, I need to do my own thing. And then the BPRD series has come out, and these characters can flourish on their own.
Yeah,
they don't need HellBoy.
So I'm curious, both of you, since HellBoy is now residing in hell,
right?
Do you think the character will actually ever return in the comics?
So he has come back. Oh my God, I feel so silly, but he's come back in a recent issue, but it's not chronologically.
A lot of the stories I've noticed are not told in chronological order.
Right.
They're told in like this almost like grand book of stories, like grand book of, like an anthology series.
And man, that's something funny about the books too, because there's so many books, so many spin-offs, and every single one is solid. That's very rare for a series.
It is. Well, and especially because Mignola adopted an approach that was very similar to Frank Miller. Actually, Frank Miller suggested he took this approach because he was having such a hard time writing the stories in a way where they were going to come out like in a sequential, like sort of schedule.
Like serialized storytelling.
Right. So he would just kind of write them when he wanted to and release them when he wanted to. And they would be sort of more like a quarterly thing or a yearly thing than necessarily like a weekly or monthly thing. It would just kind of be like whenever. And I love that sort of like organic storytelling style that he had, you know?
Yeah.
And I especially think that right now, you know, I was saying, you know, to you that HellBoy has an end.
Yeah.
And I love that about the series so much. So I don't know if he'll ever come back, and I don't know if I ever want him to because he's good.
So
he's done.
Like I sort of agree to that. Like there's certain things that make this character unique and stand out, and we have so many characters in the lexicon of comic book history that have taken the big death right there and have bounced right back from it. I wouldn't mind if he came back, but I think that he should go through. He needs to go through it. Whatever death is.
That'd be good.
There needs to be a weight to this decision.
Make it impactful,
right? And we know that he, with him being in this supernatural, the occult, the paranormal, that there's always ways, right? There's always ways to come back or always ways to get back. But there needs to be. This can't just be a light switch kind of situation where it's like, oh, he's back.
Have we ever seen a character have their journey back to the land of the living? I don't think we have.
No. We were talking a little bit off air of Swamp Thing, but Swamp Thing goes to hell and get Abigail and comes back.
Yeah,
I dig that. I dug that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, for the longest time when the, so there's a comic book arc after the Wild Hunt called Storm and the Fury. And this is the one where HellBoy, you know, spoiler alert, does actually die.
Right.
And a big part of it is he actually has a relationship with a character we'll talk about that's going to be in the new movie named Alice Monahan. And he saved her as a baby from fairies.
Right.
And so they have this very interesting relationship that ends up becoming romantic. And as, you know, a romantic at heart, I was secretly really hoping that he'd be like, I gotta fight to come back out of hell to get with Alice. Yeah. But then at the same time, that's not Mignola's style.
Right.
You know, he doesn't want it to have necessarily a happy ending. He just wants it to have an ending. And to me, I feel like HellBoy in Hell ended in such a grandiose way where you could tell that this was the culmination of all the things that Mignola loved as a writer, that he finally got to properly guide the story in the direction that he always wanted to, that as much as the romantic in me would love for him to be a swashbuckling hero and come out and save Alice and do all these grand
have the
things.
Music playing in the background.
And have Earth look like a beautiful, shiny place, which it does not look like when he dies.
Right.
You know, I would love that. I don't think Mignola would ever allow that to happen, which is sad, but I appreciate that sort of determination of him as a writer, you know?
I completely dig, you wanted that romantic stuff for, our boy HellBoy. He doesn't really look like a charmer when you just first look at him. Let's talk about how our boy HellBoy looks. There's a picture that Mignola drew of HellBoy where
wasn't it like the loincloth, like the original appearance?
Yeah. He's got like all these like bangles and occult stuff on it. I think he has a fish there too. But like his first sketching of it. And then there's one that I really, really like where it's just he just looks out of it like you could tell the weight of his hand is making his shoulders go down.
Yeah.
And his jaw is like out and pronounced. And just like it said, like we were talking about before, the angles and the shadows of everything, he just looks over. You can feel that he's just had a hell of a day, no pun intended. And that's almost in every drawing that I see of him.
Right.
You know?
Well, the way that you can tell that Mignola has specifically made HellBoy like his signature character is that unlike, you know, Superman or Batman or any of them that have this grandiose like puffed chest posture, his shoulders are shrunk, you know, swollen.
Yeah.
Like he's very like he has literally the weight of the world on his shoulders. He is the son of a demon and a witch, and he has one foot in the human world and one foot in the demon world, and he is just trying to live his life as a blue-collar hero, and he can't.
With red skin.
Yeah, with red skin. But he has, like, a giant... a giant reminder on his right arm every day that is literally sinking his shoulders into the world that he just cannot escape from. And that is just, I think, such a beautiful decision for Mignola to draw him like that you totally get the character instantly, everything about him from his body language. I think that's so cool.
No, I completely dig that, definitely. And he has those filed down stumps for horns.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the first things I noticed when I first saw that character, because I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
They thought they were like wooden kind of discs.
I thought they were goggles when I was little. So I was really like, I'm just going to get goggles and I'm going to be Hellboy. Right. But like, no, it's actually like, again, that's another reminder of like, I'm not human. Like, you know, like this is literally the reminder of my origin. You know, like for some people, it's, you know, their race or the family that they come from. Or for me, like I have a birthmark on my arm and I always think about like, this is the thing that makes me me. Right. And for him to have literally a thing on his head that is constantly a reminder of you're not human and you're never going to be human, that in his tail, you know, it's just so interesting, so
what do you guys think of the idea that in the film they had my man wear boots, but for the most part he's out there with cloven hooves? Do you think how you feel about Hellboy's sensibilities? Do you think he should be out there wearing boots?
I think he should be, you know, because you know you don't want to get athlete's hoof.
That's true. That's true. It's a thing out there, man.
Well, and I'm really excited because in the new movie, among all the other things I'm excited for, he's gonna have hooved feet.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, and like he's not gonna have normal feet. I'm so excited.
What an odd thing, right? What an odd thing to it. But hey, listen, we're in the bag for this, so this makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah.
He has sort of a samurai haircut, like
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
The skullet.
Right. In the new film, you see more of a wilder hairdo.
Yeah.
Are you do you have a preference when you see your Hellboy hair? Hairboy.
I'm gonna be honest. The fangirl in me is really into the wild tendrils that are happening from him.
Right.
In the interest of fairness, you do love David Harbour.
I do love David Harbour. So you know, non-disclosure. One of the other things I forgot to mention in our introduction as to how we got into Hellboy is I also was like, oh my god, Ron Perlman's gonna play Hellboy, girl. So I was like all about that, because you know, little kid me was very into the TV show Beauty and the Beast, which he was the Beast on that show,
right? And
I had grown to have such a huge, weird old man crush on him.
But for you, he was the beauty.
Yeah, he was. Oh, he was the beauty. I'm sorry, Linda Hamilton. Right. Like he was with that hair, like he was the beauty. But so I was so excited to see Ron in a new role where he was playing another prosthetic monster character, because I honestly feel like those are his best roles.
Isn't it interesting that he has that, and then you have Doug Jones, who is known as a guy who's never him. He's just a guy in the thing.
Yeah. No, him and Ron together was like a winning combo, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so I really love though, and I also have a big crush on David Harbour. I'll get that out there too. Right. But I love the way that in this new version he just seems so much more organically like I have been through a lot. Right. Okay? Yeah. Like, I got scars on my face. I got, like, chipped nail polish. Like, I got, like, you know, maybe some acne. Right, and, like, and my horns look like they have been through hell, literally. Right, yeah. You know, I love that. I love that style choice. I love his eyes looking insane. I adore that because as much as I loved the original makeup that was done by Rick Baker for the original Hellboy films, he just looked too clean.
Yeah, he did kind of.
You know, like, and I thought it was beautiful, but he just looked like, I think they chose to make like the marks on him look very like Mignola-ish rather than it being this organic character.
Yeah.
You know?
It doesn't feel like the markings on him exist in the real world, almost like a tattoo or something like that. Like it would have formed differently, or your skin would have reacted differently to those markings that he has on there.
Well, to quote the Goo Goo Doll, "Scars are souvenirs you never lose."
That's it, bro. See, I knew we were gonna get a nice Goo Goo Dolls reference on this.
That makes me very.
It's
happy.
not a podcast without a Goo Goo Dolls reference.
That makes me so happy.
Shout out to Eddie Wilson just for a random music reference for no reason.
Speaking of random references, they say he smells like dry roasted peanuts.
Yes.
HellBoy. Is that a hell thing? Does hell smell like peanuts?
I mean, it could. I more tend to think that is a reference to that he, again, is like a blue-collar hero. That like he would be in a bar, like an old school bar that would have dry roasted peanuts on the floor, like CBGB style.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like he's been through a lot of stuff and,
interesting question. Does HellBoy drink?
There has been moments where he does.
I've seen him drink in the film.
Yes, he does.
HellBoy whiskey.
Yeah,
HellBoy whiskey.
And there's a couple of other, like, I think there's a HellBoy beer and something like that. Wow. Okay. But yeah, no, he has drank in the comics before, but it's more that he loves pancakes.
Yes, he loves pancakes.
And the moment you discovered them is the greatest panel ever. We've lost him.
Yes, because as a young child, HellBoy has pancakes for the first time. And the demons that are trying to sway him over to open this whole gate, they literally realize that he's gone to the human side in this. And we should speak of that. We should speak of the idea that once he comes to this portal and Professor Broom, is able to take him underneath his wing, that he treats him like a regular old boy. He treats him like a regular human child. And it's through that, being raised that way, that he has this perspective of not only the sanctity of humanity and the human life, but like we were saying before, a foot in both courts. He's playing for both teams in a lot of sense, and usually one team is outright just trying to kill the other. It's not even about tolerance. It's about like, no, they're trying to stop us, so we should just kill them.
Right.
And he has to find the middle ground a lot of the times, and it's not easy, especially when you look like you already play for one side of the team.
Yeah, exactly. And to, to that effect, like one of the things that I think is something that the original movie doesn't really talk enough about is that the way that HellBoy got his name is from a BPRD member who is Lady Eden.
Yes.
And she's actually going to be in the movie, which I'm so excited about. But one of the things is she initially goes like, that looks like a little boy.
Yeah.
And, and they also mark that it looks like it's a demon from hell, and that's HellBoy. So I think
you got hell in my boy. You got boy in my hell.
It's a Reese's.
That's it.
But, I feel like one of the things that I love about Professor Broom, is that he loves HellBoy in this strange, unconditional sense.
Yes.
That he wants to see him be the best he can be. But, which we'll get to in a second when it comes to the new movie. Right. I'm a little like, I don't know how I like that. I'm a little mixed on how I like about that interpretation, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But, I love that he raises him like it's his son, and that as much as he knows he has all these like very dark, deep things that are going on within him and the possible destruction that he could bring to this world, he just wants to treat him like a little boy.
Yeah.
And have him be a part of this world and have him grow up and all that stuff. I love that.
And what's cool is that, from the beginning, because Broom is in the BPRD, HellBoy gets this, he's very familiar with protocol. Like he's with all these BPRD agents. He was discovered with the Allied forces, so the army. So a lot of these younger stories where you get younger HellBoy, he's either like with the army or with the BPRD. Like he very much understands rank and structure and protocol. Even though when he gets older, he doesn't care about it all that much. He very much grew up in this world where people put on uniforms and go fight the good fight. Like he's very much in that mind state because of Broom. And I wonder what he would have become if he not. They always talk about falling into the wrong hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You would have had this small child and with this key, this seven-headed dragon, and yeah.
Personally, I'd love to see like an alternate universe version of HellBoy. What if he ended up going to the side of the Nazis and everything?
Yeah,
kind of like a Superman Red Sun, where situation. You have the time zone was off by just 1 hour.
That's it.
Well, in a similar way, it's really interesting to think about what if HellBoy had grown up in a time that wasn't World War II.
Oh, that's true.
You know, because the thing is that he has those kind of strong moral sensibilities because he grew up in a time where that was the thing.
It was pretty cut and dry, yeah.
Right.
You couldn't Google things and figure out, what was going on with stuff.
You would be inspired by characters that we'll get to in a second, like Lobster Johnson, and you would grow up in a military mentality of respecting your elders, respecting your higher rank. You're not above anybody else. There are people above you, but you are there to serve the team and the army.
In the machine,
yeah. And that's something I've always thought about. Is I would love to see an alternative universe of HellBoy where he's raised like now.
Yeah.
And he's found now.
Or like in the 70s or the 80s, people were just starting to get the freedom thing going on. Like, wait a minute. Maybe we don't gotta listen to everything we're being told right now. Like he would have been a wild child, HellBoy there.
Yeah,
imagine him being raised by Ronald Reagan.
Oh my God, Reagan.
Yeah, well, and especially because if you think about that, HellBoy from a very young age actually grows up quite fast.
Yes.
And even though physically he looks like the body of a middle-aged man, he actually mentality-wise is so much younger.
Yeah, it's weird. His body grows fast, but his mind doesn't grow as fast.
Right.
And then once his body hits a certain point, it also kind of slows down its own growth and how he ages and stuff.
Right.
Which kind of doesn't give you a way to figure out how to approach him in a way. A lot of people don't know how to speak to him because he looks one way and acts another. And even though he's drawn as a brute. He's drawn as this big, brutish, 7 foot tall man, like strong jawed and all this stuff. The huge hand, the big chest. But besides using that right hand, he really just uses the Samaritan, a gun given to him by the Torch of Liberty.
Yeah.
Another pulp hero that I found out. I think was created by John Byrne.
Yeah.
So they can't talk about him anymore.
Right. Well, and he technically is only in Seed of Destruction.
Yeah.
When they find HellBoy, he's really nowhere
realized that.
Yeah, he's nowhere else in the comics because they just can't really use him.
He's a burn victim, essentially.
Yeah.
Puns.
Burn victim.
This guy over here.
Hey.
Yeah.
I'm punning here. But I think it's cool that he has that signature weapon, the Samaritan. I mean, he's no stranger to firearms. He loves all kinds of firearms, and we'll talk about him wielding some swords in the future.
And he's ambidextrous because technically he only has one hand that he can really use.
That is true. And we'll get into this because they were talking about how luckily as well, Ron Perlman is left-handed.
Yeah.
And so people were wondering whether or not they should have to actually switch the right hand to accommodate the actor. But I don't think I think maybe because out of necessity, HellBoy becomes a left-handed child because he can't really do anything with his weight on the other hand. But it's also canonical that HellBoy is like a terrible shot in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's because of the hand that he's using, because that happens as well.
Yeah.
Because that's gotta suck, feeling handcuffed by literally your hands. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially when you think about, like, he's been through all of this, like, military training and everything. I love to see that imperfection that he can't always, like, shoot things or do things perfectly like that. It's awesome.
Let's get into the film. Cause I think if we can get into that first film, we get into a lot of the other stuff that makes the mythos. HellBoy comes out on April 2nd, 2004, directed by Guillermo del Toro, with a box office of $99.3 million on a budget of $66 million. I hear a lot of that came from the DVD, though. The DVD sales.
Yeah. I saw HellBoy, the first one, in theaters on opening weekend. Because I was a nerd.
That's awesome.
You're good company. Remember, you're good company.
That's awesome. No, I dig that.
Yeah, and I actually took a group of my friends, and they were all girls, and we were all like, oh man, it's gonna be HellBoy. We're so excited. And we were like the nerd group in middle school, and it was dope. Super exciting. But yeah, like it wasn't a packed theater. And it was a Saturday. I remember it was in the afternoon, and there wasn't that many people. It was like there was a good amount, but it wasn't like, a Marvel. Right. Like it wasn't a lot, but yeah, it definitely gained a lot more money through rental and residual sales.
Yeah.
Because again, like I think a lot of people, and I think it's the same thing that's going to happen with this new movie, but fingers crossed, that a lot of the time Guillermo's properties or things that he decides to direct or whatever are very hard sells. for the public.
Yeah.
You know, they're very much made for a niche audience, and that was definitely the general tone of that movie when it was released, is that, you know, oh man, I don't know what this HellBoy thing is. It's totally like, you know, coming off of the MIB trend. And,
right.
You know, oh man, like it's just another hokey superhero movie. I don't know what the heck this is.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of people weren't giving it a chance.
Now, do you consider HellBoy to be a superhero comic, would you say?
Well, so I think for the general public, it is. Because it is a large creature who is defending evil. So by default, it must be a superhero.
Yeah,
and his name ends with his gender. So.
Right, yeah. Right, but I think for, you know, people like us who are nerds and actually think about these things outside of like, oh man, well I guess I gotta buy a ticket for that movie here because I don't know what else to go to.
Right.
You know,
I'm gonna go to movies like that now.
Listen,
night school.
Yeah, I as someone that goes to the movies quite a bit and also deals with people that have no knowledge of film at all. Or like what's a movie that's out. You know, they'll just be like, oh, well, I guess this sounds like a good old movie. You know, and whatever. But
who do you hang out with?
A lot of much older people that don't understand this stuff.
Yeah, they wouldn't do the deep dives and stuff like that. And
right.
Like you said, to them, this probably feels like in the middle of too many genres.
Right.
Like, not enough Spider-Man to be Spider-Man.
Right.
Not enough X-Men to be X-Men. Not enough Men in Black to be Men in Black. When it's actually enough Hellboy to be good.
Yeah, but like, again, like Hellboy is, as much as like, now people know about it, like you know about it because you found out through the movies and stuff. And did you
I started with the movies as well, yeah.
Okay, so like I feel like, you know, as someone that knew about before the movies, it was something that people just didn't know existed.
Okay.
Like it really was such a niche thing in that time that aside from if you were at Borders and you were like, ooh, that's really cool, that cover of a comic that I don't know.
Right.
Or you knew about it, you were just completely like, what is this weird red guy on a movie poster that I don't understand? And and especially, as much as I love Ron Perlman, he's not a marquee name.
Yeah.
He doesn't sell movies, and neither did really Selma Blair, and especially Doug Jones didn't, even when that wasn't his voice. It was David Hyde Pierce who was dubbing over him.
Yeah.
You know, like probably the only person in that movie that maybe people knew about was John Hurt. Right. And maybe Selma Blair.
He doesn't even make it to the sequel.
No, he is dead.
And same thing in the book. I'm reading Seed of Destruction, and Broom just dies.
Yeah.
They throw him through a wall.
Yep.
And he's just dead. And I was like, the entire book, I'm waiting for like the moment of like, we fixed it. Oh, he's back. And it never happened.
No.
And I was like, that was definitive. Like, I dig that. I dig how definitive that was. But,
and you grow to know more about him through the other like stories.
Yeah,
that
the
come
flashback kind of stories.
Right, which is super cool. I love
so
that.
you're always getting bits and pieces. He almost never really wants to give you the full scope of the legend that is Hellboy. He'll just give you the bits and pieces that you need to know of how long he's been operating, you know, in this world.
Now, Dalin, because you've read a lot more Hellboy than I have, would you say this is kind of a series where characters unexpectedly die as well?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
So that's like the Eric Larson kind of thing where, we're just going to kill this character off. Boop.
Yeah, I would say, like, there's definitely a lot of, like, unexpected twists and turns that happen in the Hellboy stories, especially when it comes to character deaths. But it's more that it's not unexpected in the sense that it doesn't have a payoff.
Right.
They all have a payoff. If they're going to die, it's because we, as the audience, have been like, all right, you know, it's the Seinfeld finale. Yeah. Time to go before you get we're tired of you, you know? Like, and I really appreciate that.
That also makes that stand out because although, you know, the last episode we just did was celebrating Detective Comics 1000. And
still need to read that.
I
picked it up. I still need to read it.
It's beautiful that the characters existed that long, but you also want to praise the evolution that happens. And so with a Hellboy comic, like, could you imagine reading every comic and literally everybody's still around? Like, no one's died, no one's taken no one's gotten hurt.
Yeah, I doubt that'll ever happen, to be honest, because especially when the title character of the franchise is already dead.
Yeah. They made a statement. They put their foot down.
Yeah, well, and even, like, you know, other characters are, like, on the chopping block. Like, Liz Sherman is, like, you know, pretty close to being dead or has already died in some issue. Roger is just constantly in and out of being alive. There's a lot of them that, and
Lobster Johnson's dead.
Yeah, Lobster Johnson's dead. But then again, what's really cool is Lobster Johnson or other characters will come back as ghosts.
And then you just find
so they're dead. But they're not always expendable. They can come back.
They can still serve.
And they have value when they do come back, which is, I think that's pretty cool and important.
Yeah.
But that first movie comes out, and it's basically based on the origin story on Seed of Destruction. It has other stories in it, but basically about the Nazis coming and with Rasputin. Karel Rodden played Rasputin, and I was hearing he doesn't look like Rasputin. I think the guy looks like the comic book.
I think he looks exactly like Rasputin.
I think he looks like the comic book version that they put down. I don't really get that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a generic white dude with a long beard.
Yeah,
I don't get.
Looks like an evil wizard to me.
That's Williamsburg, if anything.
Yeah, you ain't lying. Avocado toast and all that. I'm jumping around because I just love all this so much. But Ladislav Birin plays Carl Rupik Cronin.
Yeah,
in the
Cronin's
film.
my favorite.
Cronin is a bit different in the film as he is in the movie, but in the movie, man, this guy is a Nazi ninja.
Yeah,
sand clockwork, steampunk, assassin.
Yeah, so to me, I feel like Cronin in the movie is very much a Guillermo invention.
Okay.
He is, into body modification, and he constantly is messing around with body mutilation, and his eyes are bulging out of his head and all this stuff, especially when we get the final reveal of what he truly looks like.
Yeah.
That is definitely something that if you're a big Del Toro fan, which I also am, which I definitely owe to Hellboy being the reason why, in addition to Blade too.
Which, by the way,
which also had Rob Herman in it.
Yes, it did.
and Blade 2 is essentially his audition to be even able to get Hellboy off the ground.
Yeah. But he, if you look at his earlier films, especially my favorite, which is Kronos, which is about a grandfather that gets turned into a vampire.
Okay.
You could definitely see that, this was the evolution of that kind of character of these grotesque, mutilated, disgusting people that are just trying to live immortal and forever.
Yeah.
And are willing to do whatever to achieve that.
Yeah, and you can see that through his movies. Like we were saying, Blade 2 is, besides the title character of Blade kind of being the Hellboy of that team, the one with both feet and thing, majority of the team is humans.
Yeah.
And so it's humans fighting monsters, quote unquote monsters.
Right.
Then you got monsters fighting monsters when you get to Hellboy.
Yeah.
And then you get monsters loving humans when you get to Shape of Water. So
and then babies having babies.
Yeah, it all connects.
I think it all just connects.
Oh, listen, he is an aesthetic and he's sticking to it.
There's a little bit of Shape of Water in Golden Army.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
He gets a little bit in there with that. But another thing I had to ask when it comes to this movie, because you said that you had a affinity for the character in the comics before the film, is how did you feel about the idea that you would pair Hellboy and Liz Sherman together?
Okay.
because that's a lot of this movie. I mean, if you watch it, a lot of that first movie hangs on this relationship, this will they, won't they, between Liz Sherman and Hellboy, Ron Perlman's character, and when you look back and you realize that that's something that's not even in the comics, I would assume that there would be a divide.
Yeah, so I will speak of two minds.
Okay.
One mind is 14-year-old me was like, I'm so into this. I am into the Beauty and the Beast aesthetic of this all, and I love Selma Blair, and she's all gothy, and she's with Ron Perlman, and as Hellboy,
the fire girl with the fireproof
man. I was like, and when he
she just started fanning herself. Oh my god!
So when he has that line where he talks to her, and he's just like, I can't change any of this.
I wish I could change.
I wish I could change this. I was just like, the feelings. I'm really into this, but on the other side of it, that's not at all what happens in the comics. Liz and Hellboy are just friends.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the reasons why, as much as I love the first movie, it's very dated.
Yeah.
Because it comes from a place where superhero movies always had to have a love interest. And they just were like, well,
And the female alone had to be with somebody.
Yeah.
If there was a girl in the movie, she had to hook up with somebody.
And eventually. If she didn't, she was either a tomboy/lesbian, or she was gonna die.
Yeah.
Isn't that the? It's a movie that fails, I believe, the Bechdel test.
Yeah. This movie definitely fails the Bechdel test. 100%. Yeah.
Wait, as a matter of fact, how many other females are in Hellboy 1 besides Liz?
There is a person in the mental ward who basically is like, come on, there's someone who has like a psychotic freak out in the mental institution that Liz Sherman is in. Right. And then there's a woman who talks to that other girl who's having a mental freak out. It's like, come on, sweetie, let's move away from the door. Cause she says like, there's a big red man out there. and then she's like, come here, sweetie, you're having a freak out. Let's go. And then Liz is like, my boyfriend.
Yeah, that's her boo thing. Don't be talking about her man like that.
Yeah,
but there's not really a lot of female presence.
There isn't, and it's such a shame because in the Hellboy comics there are lots of incredible female characters. Yeah. Like I will always stand that Kate Corrigan is by far my favorite character outside of Hellboy and Lobster Johnson in the whole series because she is just basically like low key like a giant nerd for all this stuff, and she's just like, wait. I get to be part of like the troll and ghost squad. Like I'm into this. Yeah,
all about it.
That would make a great T-shirt, by the way. The troll and ghost
squad. Yeah, but she's so much fun, and it makes me so sad that she hasn't been in any of the film adaptations, but she has been in the animated film adaptations, which is really cool.
I've heard that animated stuff is pretty good. How do you rate that stuff?
Yeah, they are
canon with the movies.
Well, no,
canon with the books, I guess.
They're canon in the sense that like everything in Hellboy, in my opinion, is canon. Yeah. Because it's never really been canon to begin with. Right. You know, right. So I and because Guillermo was involved with, he was a producer on the movies, so you can tell that he definitely like had a hand in them. But like even in those movies, Liz and Hellboy aren't together. Liz actually has a thing for Abe.
Yeah,
which is kind of low key, but there's a scene where like Abe has to go and save Liz, and he actually like has to do mouth to mouth resuscitation. I was like, ooh, I'm also into this. So the thing is, for me, I feel like I said this film, as much as I adore it, is so dated in that aspect of taking Liz's character and making the only reason for her existence to be there is to blow up the thing. Yeah. And to give Hellboy a reason to do anything. Right. Because essentially, if you think about it, in the movie, she gets fridged. Yeah. You know, because
that old adage, right?
Yeah, you know, much like Gamora and like a few other characters, she gets fridged. And
tell the listeners at home what fridging is.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, actually, you guys might be better able to explain it when it comes to the reference that it comes from.
Right, so, there's this thing that goes on in comics where some writers feel that the only way to get a new wrinkle, a new dynamic or dramatic wrinkle in their male superhero characters is by killing off their girlfriends. Right. It gives them a reason to exact revenge and shake their fist at the sky. And it started with Green Lantern's girlfriend, Kyle Rayner's girlfriend, getting put in a fridge, killed and being put in the fridge.
Yeah. Ironically, it originated in the term with the fridge. Yeah. Happened in Savage Dragon first.
Oh, really?
They kill off his girlfriend literally at the end of the first issue, and he's like, I'm green and I'm pissed.
Yeah. And the thing is like, it so frustrates me that this is continuously a writing strategy that they give male characters or even female characters. There's male love interests that female characters see that they also get fridged. Yeah. But it's so frustrating to me that they feel like that's the only way to propel a male character or any character into an aggression to save the day. Yeah. You know, instead of it being something where it doesn't have to end with someone dying to give them an emotional beat to get there.
I think the problem ends up lying in the idea that you want to portray Hellboy as kind of nonchalant. Right. So then how do you get that? I don't think it should be Liz. Right. I think it should be something else. Right. But you do need something. You need to put a rocket on his back somehow. Right. And I don't think they ever really figured out how to get him from A to B.
Not in the movies, anyway. Definitely not in the movies. And that's the thing is that Liz in the comics is a character that stands out on her own, and she might not be as in the spotlight as she is in the movies, but she has her own personality, and she doesn't need HellBoy to be a romantic partner to allow that to be seen. Yeah. Like, she's actually more like a little sister, big brother sort of dynamic in the comics with him. And I feel like they could have had that same relationship with her dying and him having that reaction of her being injured with them not being romantic.
No, you know? I agree with that. And in the same way, what I noticed after rewatching these films with the context of the comics, there's also the same way you were saying that Liz doesn't need HellBoy. In the films, there's a level of like HellBoy needs Liz.
Yeah.
Like, that Liz validates HellBoy's human side, his
humanity,
his human existence.
Yeah.
Where I feel like the comic book version kind of is that level. He kind of doesn't care anymore. Like he believes he's human. He knows his life.
Yeah.
And he knows how people may view him. But this HellBoy that we've seen in these films, he still very much is reaching out to that side of the world.
Right.
And he feels like it's not reaching back to him. How do you feel about that portrayal, that characteristic where Ron Perlman, at one point, even in the second film, he's walking down the street and they're like, "Oh, you're ugly" or whatever. And he's like, "Yeah, I know." He's just over it. Like, do you prefer the HellBoy that is yearning for that connection to humanity, or one that's a little bit more confident in his portrayal of?
So for me, I am someone who loves the way that the comics have handled it, where HellBoy is someone that society is aware of and knows of.
Yeah.
And I love seeing, like, again, with the new movie, we'll get to in a second. I know I'll keep talking about it because I'm just really excited. No, yeah. But he's on the street and people just walk by and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's HellBoy." Yeah. Like, whatever. It's okay.
It's that guy, whatever.
Yeah, but I think the thing that it's important to keep in mind, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, is, in my opinion, a constant issue that keeps happening when it comes to talking about the original HellBoy movies is that people think Guillermo del Toro invented HellBoy.
Right.
And
that's true.
He didn't. No, he didn't invent HellBoy. And as much as the movie iteration, he is definitely, that is his HellBoy. You know, a character who feels misunderstood, is not accepted by society, who constantly feels like a monster that nobody is ever going to love. That is a Guillermo del Toro invention. Yes, and let me tell you, 14-year-old me, totally into that.
Right.
Love that. Yeah. But when it comes to the comics, he is not that kind of a character at all. Yeah. Like, he's been through a lot of garbage in his life, but he's definitely someone who has a little bit more swagger and confidence and doesn't allow the world to surprise him.
Yeah.
You know, and
in its cruelty. Like, you've been around for so long, it's like, yeah, you guys been jerked. Like, this is just how y'all work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of my favorite panels is from one of the short stories where he has to go up against a South American like creature that I'm forgetting the name of. Mm. But in the panel, there's a little kid who guides him through this tunnel, and he's like, "Yeah, you know, exposition. This is like this crazy, you know, cult thing that happened." And HellBoy's like, "That's the stupidest stuff I've ever heard. No offense." And then the kid's like, "Well, yeah, you know." And I love that he just is not surprised at all.
Right.
So I feel like, as much as I love Ron's interpretation, that is also, again, a Del Toro's interpretation of feeling like constantly everyone is just gonna judge him, and it's a very like teenage angsty My Chemical Romance kind of view on the world.
Right.
You know, that isn't the HellBoy that I like. And that isn't the HellBoy that I think would need Liz to love him to feel like he has a human side to him.
Right.
He just can either gain that on his own, or he doesn't need it. You know? So.
Yeah, he has the gravitas that I feel like Superman has in a lot of senses. Yeah. Where it's like, he's been around the block, bro. Like, he's done this. And you can say what you're going to say, and it might affect him. It might affect him, but you'll never know it. Like, he'll keep it to himself, and he'll, keep on living the life that he has, because you're not going to be the first person to ever say, like, you look like a demon, or, and so he's been around that block, and I like that about that character, but I did find it odd that, at certain points, and there's even one point in the sequel where he just gets straight up drunk.
Yeah.
Because he's just so down on this whole idea of who he is and how incompatible, that makes him with the rest of the world. Yeah. But that is Del Toro, right? All his movies is this misunderstanding of, like, I just want to be there. I just want to connect.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Because he was like a chubby little boy in Mexico who constantly watched monster movies. And like he even said when he watched, Creature from the Black Lagoon, he felt sorry that the monster never got with the girl.
Wow.
And like that has constantly been his thing. So, seeing Hellboy and Liz together, seeing the Shape of Water monster with Eliza, that is him. That is just his thing.
One of my favorite things ever was I was in a Target a few months ago. Somebody actually took a copy of The Shape of Water and put it right next to B-Movie. I'm like, that's a double feature anywhere in the world.
Yeah, for somebody in their living room.
Love doesn't have limits. That's it.
Yeah.
That love story takes a big chunk of the movie, but we do get a little bit of our boy Abe Sapien in both films.
Yeah.
Are you curious to what seems to be a lack of Abe Sapien in this third one?
Well, in my opinion, I love Abe, and would love for him to come back, but I feel like there's so many other BPRD members that have yet to get any sort of like shine or spotlight in these movies that Abe needs to like take some seats.
Right.
And just chill. Just go to a Holiday Inn and chill. We'll let him know when we need him. I don't think we need him in the story.
He'll be in a sequel.
When you get to the sequel, Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, which comes out in July of 2008, same director, Guillermo del Toro, box office of $160.4 million on a budget of 85, so did double basically. When you get there, Abe gets his own little love story. There.
Yeah, with Princess Nuala.
You get Abe gets his own little love story there, and you really start diving into Hellboy being a little bit more sympathetic to the creatures that he's fighting. Yeah. That also speaks more to the comics, where you see he's not a Ghostbuster. Like, he's not out there trying to kill ghosts. Sometimes he'll just be like, listen, the people want their house back. Like, can you just, like, what can I do to get that done? And,
right.
And I like that aspect of it. But what you were saying with so many members of the BPRD, we get introduced to Kraus.
Yeah, Johann Kraus.
In the second film.
Yes.
And Peter, I gotta tell you, man, this guy is out of control. He's how would you best describe Kraus? He's like a spirit, a smoke.
Yeah, so Johann Kraus is essentially like a floating spirit that they have been able to embody through a suit that he can release himself into the world, and he can like attract and come back into the suit,
like a valve of smoke.
Yeah,
so he looks like an old school, like an old school divers, like metal divers suit, and he can come in and out, and he's just a puff of smoke, and he can use that smoke to reanimate the dead. Yeah. Which was like I was saying, like, I feel like the BPRD is this Wheel of Fortune of characters,
right?
Where just like the Suicide Squad, like, it behooves you to constantly change up the roster to show how much of this you can actually flesh out, as opposed to being like, well, here's the 3 or here's the 2.
Right. Well, and especially like when you think about that this story is a completely original story that isn't based on any of the comics at all.
Yeah.
Like, Guillermo was definitely going like, well, I want like this member and this and this and this. And he was definitely cherry picking and finding the things that he loved within the Hellboy universe, but also making it his own thing.
And working alongside Mike Mignola while doing it. Like, that's not... that's nothing to laugh at. The idea that the guy who created this is sitting alongside you going, okay, so how do you want to do this?
Yeah.
It's cool to get that level of input in on there. Yeah. But Del Toro wanted to make this a trilogy from the beginning, and I really do think that the second one, I enjoyed the second one more, but I have a hard time figuring out if the second one is more Hellboy.
Yeah, no, that's a conflict I have constantly all the time. So like, just
I haven't even seen that.
So just for our viewers who have never seen the other Hellboy movie, or the Hellboy movies before, but especially this one, this story is primarily about how there is a race of elves who are very much wanting to coexist with man in a peaceful way, except for the Prince Nuada, who's played by Luke Goss, who is from Blade 2.
And he killed it, though. He killed it in that role.
Yeah. And, he was all my Bishonen anime dreams when I was, 18 when this movie came out. So I was just like, oh, you look like Seth Roth. I'm so into this. But anyway, he essentially is this character who is like a very aggressive prince who is like, I just want the fairy folk of the world to be understood.
I got a lot of Loki vibes from him.
Yes.
I got a lot of Loki vibes from him.
Yeah, or Loki has a lot of vibes,
That's actually pretty true.
But he very much wants the fairies and magical folk of the world who have been secluded by man and hidden by man to finally take notice and take back the world that they owned. Yes. And, we also have Princess Nuala, who is Prince Nuada's twin, and that is the one that Abe ends up having a big crush on, and they have a little romance. It's very cute.
They recite poetry to one another.
It's very cute. But essentially, HellBoy, what I love about this story is that HellBoy in it has to essentially decide, like he does in the comics itself, is he going to fight for the fairy folk who has more of a connection with, like the magical trolls and stuff like that, or does he fight for humans who in the movies hate him?
Especially this
straight up hate him.
In this one, they make it a big point that people do not like him.
Yeah.
And there's several points in which he has just saved a bunch of people, and the cops show up and like, what are you doing here? And they put guns on him.
Right.
And there's a literal devil on your shoulder moment in the second film where he's going to kill this big plant Cthulhu thing, and the prince literally just shows up on the roof above him, and it's like, you sure you want to do that? Like, that's the last of his kind.
Yeah,
he's the last one ever.
He's the last plant creature that's very Miyazaki-ish.
Yeah, he's the last one. You could kill him, and you'll never have to worry about him again. But you'll also never see another one like him, and like. They made it a point to seem like the creature was confused, angry, and that's why he was acting out. And then HellBoy shoots this creature, and it's blood. This is Del Toro.
This is the most Del Toro of Del Toro things.
Its blood goes everywhere, and then that grows plant-like
into moss.
and grass. And grows plant.
Green.
Yeah, yes. and grows plant.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Also very Swamp Thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very Swamp Thing, and so. But HellBoy does take the shot.
Yeah.
When push comes to shove, the HellBoy does choose in that moment to stop that creature and kill that creature.
Yeah.
But these films are constantly about that choice.
Yeah.
About making that choice and making that choice on your own.
On a topic of that kind of character, do you think that was Del Toro's audition to kind of like maybe do Swamp Thing? Because he was originally supposed to be in Del Toro's Justice League Dark.
Yeah, I did hear about this. And Justice League Dark. That was another one of those movies. I think that he was quoted on saying, like, I wrote the script. They never got back to me.
Him and Warner Brothers don't have a good relationship because of the Hobbit movies. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, because he was like, and I also heard that they're talking about like a Hulk show. Like he had like a laundry list of scripts that he had done treatments for, and no one ever got back to him for it. So it's like, I can see how eventually he just puts up his hands.
Isn't Pacific Rim also a Warner Brothers movie?
It is. It's technically a Legendary Studios movie.
Which legendary company is it?
Yeah, right. But you can definitely tell that like Guillermo had a lot of other comic book influences that he would bring into these movies, and I definitely think Swamp Thing for sure is definitely a part of this, like the whole like loving nature, it's all part of this big grand magical scheme, and also actually elements from other HellBoy comics like The Corpse. The Corpse is a story that has a lot of influences of fairies, because that's where actually HellBoy finds Alice Moynihan as a baby and saves her from a thing of fairies.
There's a changeling that takes the baby's spot.
Yeah.
And so HellBoy finds out that basically this baby's been replaced by a fake changeling baby.
Right.
And then to get the baby back, he needs to make sure that this corpse gets a proper Irish burial.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. I haven't read that comic in a very long time. It's something like that. But that is one of those things that you can tell that Guillermo was just loving that whole, like, the fairies want to be noticed and they have to fight to be, loved and not loved, but like seen, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big influence as to what the elf sort of dynamic of the story with Nuada is all about.
Right.
In the troll market too.
And we find out about the existence of a golden army, which if you're able to place the pieces of a broken crown together, they've been broken and scattered now.
Yeah, well, and half of them is with the humans and half of them is with the elves.
Yeah, and so if you can put this together, you get this golden army of, they're not really great fighting robots, but they are massive in number and they can regenerate.
Yeah.
And so it's this idea,
and they're gold.
Yeah, and they're gold. So it's this idea that you're gonna turn this army on the earth and take it all over. And at one point, HellBoy just straight up challenges for the army in a fight, wins.
Yeah.
And has the crown in his hand, and he's like, "Oh, all this power." And Liz is like, "Nah, screw this." Takes it and melts the crown or whatever.
Yeah.
In that movie, they tease that HellBoy's having twin children.
Yeah. Well, and also they tease that yet again, he is the bringer of the apocalypse.
Yes.
And that's something that they talk about with the first HellBoy in a flash forward or dream scene. Yeah. Yep. Okay, now I know what part of the movie we're
on. For those of you at home, we're watching the movie.
Yeah, we're watching the first movie behind us. But yeah, so he already knows that this is like foreseen and this is something that's going to come. And so the Angel of Death in the second movie is like, listen.
I actually thought that was a pretty legit scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so essentially what happens is that HellBoy is significantly injured by Prince Nuada. He has a blade in him that if it is moved at a certain angle, it will continue to become like longer and will literally stab through his body and kill him.
Yeah.
And so Liz and him and Abe go to the Angel of Death, and the Angel of Death says, "Listen, Liz, like, I know you love your boy, but he's gonna kill everybody and your babies that are in you that low-key he doesn't know you're pregnant are going to bring about the end of the world. So do you want that? Like, we could just like kill him right now, or do you want this?" And she chooses that she loves him so much that she'd rather him be alive than
that was well written because the way that she legitimately states the proposition is like either him or the entire world. Because if he lives, he will live to destroy the entire world. That's the prophecy. So right now, you can choose the world and be done with it. He's already dying. He's already here. Death is coming for him. As the Angel of Death, I'm telling you, he's going to die. He will eventually die.
Right.
We can cut it all down the middle, have him just die right now, none to worry about. And she's like, she literally says, I'll deal with that when it happens. The other death, I want him back to life. Mm-hmm. And that was a level of love and care to that character that I think was pretty cool, considering that this relationship is not mostly comic accurate.
Yeah,
it was cool to have somebody be like, I would,
And again, I think it's a very Del Toro sentence. Like, that's a very, like, romantic, like, lush sort of
love you
idea.
at your monster, right? Because he is an imperfect monster.
Yeah.
And she chooses to love him like that anyway.
Yep.
Which is, look, I'm about to shed a little tear there. But let's get into this third film, right? So, I have a little bit of a quote here from a Reddit, Ask Me Anything that Del Toro did when he was asked about the third film, in 2014. He says, "Well, we don't have that movie on the horizon, but the idea was to have HellBoy finally come to terms with the fact that his destiny, his inevitable destiny, is to become the beast of the apocalypse, and having him and Liz face that sort of, that part of his nature, and he has to do it in order to be able to ironically vanquish the foe that he has to face in the third film. He has to become the beast of the apocalypse to be able to defend humanity, but at the same time, he becomes a much darker being. It's a very interesting ending to the series, but I don't think that it will happen. We've gone through basically every studio and asked for financing, and they are not interested. I think that the first movie made its budget back and a little bit of profit, but then it was very, very big on video and DVD. The story repeated itself with the second already. It has made its money back at the box office, but a small margin of profit in the release of the theatrical print. sadly, now, from a business point of view, all studios know is that if you don't have the safety net of DVD and video, they view your project as dangerous. And that's kind of sad.
Yeah, well, especially it's actually a really big sign of how much the ancillary market is just dying.
Yeah.
You know, that like a studio doesn't feel confident in releasing a movie anymore, that they know that the DVD, and other sales just really aren't going to recoup the way that they used to back in the day.
Right.
You know, especially because like now a movie, the saving grace is it'll make money in China.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think, as much as I love HellBoy, this new HellBoy, I don't think it's getting a Chinese release.
No.
I so think it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, and
they do more sci-fi than they do mysticism.
Yeah, well, especially because it deals with like demons.
That's what I'm saying.
Very
Like when we start dealing with religion, they don't really dig that. But when we deal with creatures and stuff, that would sell. But the rest of it, a lot of this is steeped in things that I don't know if they would necessarily be interested in.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what the international sales were for the first two movies, because I don't know how much international box office they made. Yeah. And the other thing that is kind of related to this quote that's important, I think, as for the audience to realize, is that Guillermo really wanted like a triple the size budget for the third movie. He wanted it to be this big, bombastic, huge movie that was all his Lovecraftian dreams, because he also wanted to make a Lovecraft movie that never ended up happening. He wanted it to be this big, grand, giant finale, and there was no way he was going to make it, a studio was going to give him that budget, or that enough people were going to see it to recoup that budget. Yeah. There's no way.
Yeah, and we're at a point now, like we were saying, where no matter how good or original your story may be, if it's not going to make the money that we need, it's not going to happen. To the point that they'd rather go to the same wells over and over and over and over, as opposed to make a movie. Now, I see both sides of that. Yeah. Because you can have somebody pitch you a hell of a movie, take $800 million of your dollars, and do nothing with it.
Yeah.
You know? And that happens too. You know, where they're like, no, don't worry. This is going to be the next Avatar. You ain't got nothing to worry about. Yeah. And then it falls. Right. So it is hard to pick and choose, but I feel like we're playing it too safe now. Right. I feel like nowadays things are a little bit too safe.
Well, when they were pitching that movie, it was also in a pre-Netflix distributor deal era. Yeah. So do you think this could have been a movie that could have maybe benefited from like Netflix streaming as a distribution for it?
I actually think that a Netflix show would probably be the best medium for this.
Yeah, that's actually
character.
That's my dream. Honestly, is I've always been an advocate for that. I feel Hellboy, as much as it's great in a cinematic feature length form, would be so much better as a series.
Yeah, and it's because the stories are written in an anthology form where it's literally Monster of the Week or and you can just do that like that. But another thing that they had to deal with, you talking about, they mentioned Netflix. This was in a time where people were their sensibilities were a little bit stronger. People had a objection to this film just because it had the word hell in the title. Yeah. There was a lot of people that were just like, nope. Oh, nah, can't. Hell, not doing it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when there were advertisements for this, they actually had to air them after a certain time of day, kind of similar to Kevin Smith's Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
That makes a lot of sense.
Like, you couldn't say that title like after a certain or before a certain time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and especially because like the original movies all had a PG-13 rating, so clearly they were going for a wider audience. That like there aren't a lot of parents that will be like, oh yeah, like let's go see that HellBoy. That sounds like a great title for my children to take it.
This is the second time I'm mentioning it, but it's the Suicide Squad problem, right? Yep, are you really running to go take Billy and Johnny to go see Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean? And
yeah,
the
same
but
thing, Batman's there.
Yeah, same thing. Like HellBoy. What is it? What is this? What does this mean? So they did definitely face off against a bunch of different problems in trying to get a third one off the ground, but now a third one is off the ground, and people are saying that the idea that a third one could even exist without Ron Perlman and without Guillermo del Toro is just downright blasphemous. What do you got? Let's speak on that a little bit. There, how do you feel about the idea? And this is something that's going on in the fandom. We talked about this a little bit off air, but this idea that people are becoming so territorial with these IPs, and they feel like they get to pick and choose what a correct adaptation is, the right director, the right casting. This is the same fandom that wanted Heath Ledger hung when he was first casted as the Joker. So it's
to be fair, you have people going on saying, "Oh, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that." Jared Leto is the Joker. Oh, I don't want to see it. Well, we didn't need to see it, so
yeah.
Hunka.
It happens on both sides. Yeah, it definitely happens on both sides. But should this movie franchise stop with the two? Is it locked down with Del Toro?
No.
Is it a situation where Del Toro is the only one with the key to the magic land that is Hellboy stories?
If we're saying that, like, let's say hypothetically speaking, we have the Michael Bay Transformers movies, and there are people that really love those train wrecks. But here's the thing about that: you can give somebody else the reins, and they might make an incredible movie. Bumblebee was a fantastic movie.
Bumblebee.
Yeah. So, as long as you have a good story, as long as you have a great cast, great writing, etc., great catering, I don't know, but as long as you have something quality, give it to them.
Yeah, and especially because, again, like I said, it's so important for the world to realize, including some of our listeners possibly, who are a little on the fence,
right?
Is that Guillermo, as much as he created an incredible version of Hellboy, that isn't the comics version. And Mike Mignola, as the creator, just like George Lucas, just like a bunch of, people who have created amazing forms of art that you get annoyed with the things that end up happening with that art, they're the creator. Yeah. They are allowed to do that. It is not
Star Wars fans.
Right. And listen, I get it. The people versus George Lucas, I totally get it. But if Mike Mignola, who has done this character for 30 years, wants to do that, let him do it. He's co-writing the script. He has so much involvement in it, and you could just even see in interviews how much he's this is the movie I wanted. Right. It is so cool that we should get behind that.
Yeah, definitely, especially if we like the source material. And what's kind of weird is that I try to make a comparison in my mind of why this would get the backlash that it did, and I was thinking maybe of for a more recent film, the idea of Ryan Coogler not coming back for Black Panther 2.
Yeah.
Wait, he's not coming back?
No, I'm saying that. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Clutch my pearls.
We obviously can't tell. A Black Panther story without Ryan Coogler, but that news would perk your ears up.
Yeah.
Because it makes you think. But why I think that's an unfair comparison is because people, like you said, were not coming in droves to see Del Toro's Hellboy.
Yeah.
So why is there all of a sudden we love this? Wait a minute, we gave this to you, and if you loved it enough, we would have a third one already. Right. But you didn't love it enough.
Yeah, and also guys, we've had multiple versions of Batman. Yeah. We've had multiple directors touch Batman.
Yeah.
Yep. We've had multiple artists form and give their own adaptations of this character. Hellboy is allowed that same thing.
That's actually a very, very good comparison, because I feel first of all, I want to just be in a room with Del Toro and Tim Burton. But
my God, same.
But secondly, a lot of what Hellboy 1 and 2 and Batman 89 Returns is the mythos through the lens of somebody who's sees things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of people saw that and thought that was the Bible of it. That this is how that character is always, and this is how they should always be portrayed.
Right.
To the point that, like you say, where you get people who don't understand some of these characters saying things like, well, I saw them do that in this film, so that must be part of the characteristic. When really it's just their character through a prism of the director, who has their own they have their own things that they're trying to accomplish. They have their own things, and they will twist and bend and sometimes even break mythos to accomplish what they're trying to say.
Right. Look at Christopher Nolan. He was able to make a Batman movie that was so against what so many people had gotten used to of seeing Batman on screen, of being this glossy, gothic, beautiful,
nipples,
movie.
Of course, nipples.
Right. But I'm glad with a lack of bat nipples. But at the same time, Nolan's is so much more grounded in reality and is so much more earthy and dark that we're allowed to have a different interpretation of Hellboy. Yeah.
On the topic of the Nolan movies, I'm actually going to be going to the IMAX screening of it this upcoming week.
Yeah.
My only problem with those movies is how he would say it's much more grounded in reality. In this world, the Penguin wouldn't be existing. I'm like, no, you can still have the Penguin. You can still have this. You can have that. Come on, man.
Well, that's another thing. Is like even when Nolan's taken, those movies are amazing. You know, the amazing works of cinema. Even with that, it's not 100%. It's not 100% of what you think of Batman.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the best parts,
yes.
and I'm ramped up to 100, but there's still other parts completely missing whole cloth.
Yeah,
and it almost axes you. Should you settle for one interpretation, limited in only one man's scope, limited in only one man's vision, a great vision, but only one perspective.
Right.
Whereas now with this, we can see a whole new vision, a whole new direction. We are already seeing a whole new character design, which has some people loving it, some people hating it, but it's created the fervor that I think this film needs. It's created that that energy.
Well, and you could actually say it's funny how Guillermo's movies, in a way, are kind of like the Nolans.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whereas I feel like this new Hellboy movie is kind of like the Tim Burton Batman approach, where it's much more like this is what it kind of really should have been from the beginning. Not necessarily visually, because in a lot of ways, both movies are kind of similar in visual ways, but from a story perspective, this is so much more what like Hellboy should have been from the beginning.
I did really dig in watching the Del Toro films. Obviously the characters, the creature designs, the character designs, I think are amazing. But a lot of the times where you just see like Abe Sapien and Hellboy together, and neither one are CGI.
Yeah,
you know, like this idea
so
there,
beautiful.
Like you could just feel it real in the.
I like that.
And like I'm not a CGI stickler. I'm not one of those people like, oh, it's way too much. But you forget sometimes about how much practical effects can add a third dimension to everything sometimes. And I hope that they go in that direction.
No, they definitely are. Like, they made a very big point actually about like the new makeup artist on this movie definitely wanted almost every single thing humanly possible, with the exception of a few things, to be prosthetic effects.
Awesome.
You know, especially because we're gonna have I can never say his name right, but Garagarash, who's he's like a pig character who's
like a boar, like a big boar.
Man. And he works for the Blood Queen, which we'll get to in a second. You know, he is going to be completely 100% prosthetics, and that is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and aside from like obviously a few characters here and there, like I really appreciate that like Baba Yaga and Garagarash and like so many of them are going to like physically be there on screen. You know, it's so cool.
It does that a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think this could be the movie that causes a resurgence in practical effects in film?
I don't know. I hope so. That would be cool.
I do think that they should make it a point to at least their films differentiate.
Yeah.
Because of that use. It reminds me of the Russo's use of practical action. To change things. Like you watch something like Winter Soldier or Civil War or something, then you watch those fight scenes and it's like, oh, they took time to do that.
Right.
Like, that is not just a hodgepodge of stuff. And when you see some of these character designs, it tells you like, oh, these creatures are individuals.
Yeah.
Someone sat there with this model and played with it and played with it and played with it and added and created a creature on its own. And I feel like that's where it's going to, because like it or not, a lot of people want to jump all these movies all together in the same thing.
Yeah.
See, most people don't even know there's a Marvel in DC, let alone a Dark Horse.
Right.
You know? And so people just want to see like, oh, so what is this other Superman thing that I'm seeing? And they have to find a way to make it different. And I think in using practical effects and adding a little bit more of that realism to these beautifully grotesque characters sometimes.
Yeah.
I wanted to say grotesque, but sometimes they're beautifully grotesque. Like there's poetry in how ugly this thing is.
Yeah.
That's where it's gonna sit, and that's where it's gonna differentiate from everything else.
Yeah, and especially because if you think about like how much we don't have enough movies that are kind of that almost 80s sort of like grounded, gritty monster movie aesthetic. Like one of my favorite movies of all time is Highlander.
Okay.
And I love that kind of like big massive bro, like we're gonna sword fight, and it's like swords and fantasy and metal sort of imagery that I feel like having this new Hellboy movie look like that as opposed to the beautiful artistic visuals of the Guillermo movies is is such a cool way to go about it. Like, this entire movie from the trailer looks like the most badass metal cover I have ever seen, and I'm so excited.
No, I definitely get those same vibes.
Yeah.
I like that this is going to be kind of a little bit of like, this isn't your grandmother's HellBoy
no,
kind of stuff.
No.
But there's a little bit of that, I feel like, in the
this isn't going to be your Baba Yaga's kind
of.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a little bit of that in the marketing for this. There's a lot of like, this is not the HellBoy that you're used to. But I'm glad for that. I'm glad for the idea for that. When we were talking about the practical effects, it reminds me of the difference of how I feel with the Ninja Turtle film.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh boy.
I even though you can tell that these rubber suits in the first one, the idea that they're in the real world, the idea that they're in the real world and active,
and they're organic.
There's something to that where I believe that way more than the quote unquote realistic CGI turtles.
Yeah,
that are in the new.
It's
stuff.
A video game then. That's what it becomes.
Yeah. Or an animated movie.
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's Toy Story.
Yeah.
But writ large.
Yeah.
And so give me more of that, because I'm definitely gonna have that nostalgia feel when I start seeing some of those creatures. And I did when I rewatched these HellBoy films. I was like, oh, these are people in the real world, you know. And someone had to take great care to not only wear that outfit or be under those tons of prosthetics or all that other kind of stuff. And Harbor seems to be game, because he's in all that stuff.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm interested because of the fact this is now this is the proving ground for David Harbour with this movie, and then you have what's her name, the one who plays 11 on Stranger Things with the upcoming Godzilla film.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yes, Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
This is gonna be like, can they do it in a non-Stranger Things film?
Well, and can they hold the attention of an audience outside of Netflix?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
And Finn Wolfhard, which is the most metal name I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I love him.
He's doing a lot of movies, and it's mostly movies where he's riding a bicycle, which he's really going to be typecast as just a bicycle kid. Just somebody on Reddit made the comment he should be doing a Lance Armstrong movie.
I like that.
But he's doing a lot of movies, unfortunately, where it's kind of Stranger Things-esque.
Yeah.
It was basically Stranger Things with a clown.
Right.
And I feel they've got to see how can they do in a non-Stranger Things kind of film.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, and especially to see can they be marquee names that bring in people, because it's one thing to have Stranger Things be a selling point where it's oh, well, I can go home and binge watch my thing on Netflix and not pay any money to go in a theater. But
wasn't the movie Ken the main selling point was from one of the producers of Stranger Things?
Yeah.
I love those weird tangential credits that they try to put at the beginning. It's from a guy who knew the guy who cut the lawn of the guy who made Power Rangers. What is that supposed to do for me?
That one upcoming horror movie from Sony, it literally says, from James Gunn, the revolutionary producer of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah,
something like that, but he's a producer.
Brightburn,
Yeah,
Brightburn.
It's so true. Yeah, no, I'm really curious to see how audiences who don't know about Stranger Things, or just any run of the mill audience member, takes in David Harbour.
Well, it's weird. We were talking about the Del Toro stuff. Felt like stuff like Blade and his earlier work felt like auditions for stuff that he would eventually go on to do.
Right.
Am I wrong to say there's a lot of Sergeant Hopper in
Chief
HellBoy,
Hopper,
in HellBoy? A lot of it's I don't want to be here right now, and I don't want to deal with this right now, but I'm the only one equipped to deal with this right now, so I kind of have to deal with this right now.
Well, it's super funny because actually the way that David Harbour got the role is because Mike Mignola's wife was watching him in Stranger Things, and she's like, that kid right there, he could play HellBoy. See, and it's so true. It's so true.
That's why, that's why Netflix is important. See, people just scrolling. All of a sudden, you recognize somebody.
Yeah.
And now you want them in your movie. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot more of that in his HellBoy than in Perlman's HellBoy. A lot more of this frustration with dealing with, we're still doing this?
Yeah.
I also find it funny that David Harbour he's kind of like an ancillary character in Stranger Things. To an extent, it's more of the focus on the kids.
Yeah.
But out of all of them, he's the guy that gets the lead movie. It's that's weird. Because he's got that personality. He's got that dynamic where he was one of the most important characters in Stranger Things, even though he was a side character.
Yeah, he doesn't chew the scene or demand the attention, but somehow his path and his plight are some of the most interesting parts of that show. And a lot of it is just the relatable plight of, I don't know how I got in this situation, but I'm gonna try to do the best I can to not fuck it up more. And hopefully fix it.
Right.
Fix things.
Right.
And he was not a squeaky clean character on that show either.
No.
You know,
he had a drinking problem.
Yeah, he was not Hard Stars or Horseshoes, and neither is HellBoy.
Yeah.
And I think that's gonna add a layer to this. But we got a new villain in this HellBoy film. Nimue. So she's the Blood Queen, but we were talking a little bit off air. It seems to be like there's going to be a combination of characters.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to know that, like, as we've been saying throughout this episode, that a lot of Mignola's work is related to folklore. Yes. And in this particular story, it's really related to Arthurian legend.
Yes.
And Nimue is actually the Lady of the Lake.
Yes.
And so she, and that's why low-key little Easter egg thing. If you watch the latest trailer of the movie, they use the song Smoke on the Water, which is a low-key little, like, fun tribute to the fact that Hellboy, you know, fire, is going and creating smoke on the water that is the Lady of the Lake, which I love that choice. When I said that, I was like, that's brilliant.
Yeah. That second trailer was a lot better than that first one.
Oh my god. Oh, yeah.
On the topic of the first trailer, though, why did they use Monet?
I think the thing with the marketing team for this movie is they don't seem to understand how to balance the people that only know Hellboy from the Guillermo movies with the people like me who are going because of the comics.
You're looking for the deep cuts, right?
Yeah, they don't know how to balance, like, he's still funny, but it's R-rated, and there's gonna be people that get, like, decapitated, like, stuff like that.
There also seems to be a formulaic way of these superhero trailers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you're doing it to a certain beat, everyone's doing it to some kind of cover of some song that you know.
Yeah.
And then you do the title card reveal, and then you do the stinger joke at the end of it.
Yeah.
And it's every trailer ever, all the time.
It's a formula.
And so I felt like with that, it was definitely it was weird. A lot of people took umbrage with how Hellboy was used, and they almost made him look jokey. And he does more than quips. I think he does one-liners.
Yeah.
He's the 90s action star. He's not he's not there like Ant-Man always got, or Iron Man always got something to say.
Right.
But he will say, like, say cheese and then throw cheese at you.
Right. Like, well, and he, again, like a lot of his, like, heroes that he looks up to, he's the one that says, like, the kind of sarcastic, like, zingers.
Yes.
Like I said before, he will say things like to this respective, like, wonderful, like, indigenous culture, like, that's really stupid. And so I actually really appreciated in the trailer, the first one, that they showed the scene of him coming into the secret BPRD headquarters that's in, like, a London bar, and the woman's like, I need to see an ID, and he's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, that is exactly, like, the kind of humor that I love from Hellboy. But I know a lot of people will be like, that's the same thing as Ron Perlman. So, like, I just don't understand.
You just brought up something that might be also a little bit problematic for the film. If I'm not mistaken, we made a lot of comparisons earlier in this episode to Men in Black. Yes. Men in Black will also be taking place in London this year.
Yeah.
When its reboot. I wonder, does that come out this year too?
Yeah, and its trailer was released the same week as the first.
So, I mean, I hope it just creates interest in both, and everyone just goes sees both.
Yeah.
But that's very similar. Like, that idea of, like, we'll take this international.
Yeah, but I will say, in Hellboy's defense, it doesn't have Liam Neeson in it.
That's true.
And Liam Neeson's creating a lot of fun conversation.
Are they going to reboot Liam Neeson? When does that happen?
I think
the Liam Neeson-sons.
That's it. We're gonna
just reboot his, like, everything about him.
Oh my god! They're just gonna put him in a green book, and then this is gonna be all set past that. That's all they're gonna do.
It's so true. But anyway, Sorry, back to Nimue for a second.
Blood god.
Yeah,
Goddess.
Yeah, so the thing that is really important is that there's a lot of villains that are in like the Hellboy world, and one of the ones that I particularly really like, and I apologize to the super fans that I mispronounce her name, is Heshate, I believe is her name. So she is actually the goddess of witches.
Yes.
And in her storyline, or the multiple arcs that she appears in the Hellboy world, she is constantly telling Hellboy, like, you know, do you really care about these human dudes? Like, I'm this really sexy witch lady. Why don't you come be with us? Again, like, very similar to Hellboy 2. Why don't you fight for the creatures that you actually came from and not these ones that hate you? And you can totally tell that in the trailer or the new movie coming out, that is definitely the direction that they're making Nimue. So she's a little bit of Heshate with Nimue, but it's like its own kind of brilliant like mixture. Like she's like, I'm here to kill, humanity. This is what I'm here for. But by the way,
if you want to date,
but by the way, you could be my king.
That's it. I'm totally down for that. And the story, the movie seems to be taking a lot from the Wild Hunt. Story that Nimue appeared in.
Yes.
And this story deals with Hellboy getting called back to England by the Osiris Club, a club referenced in one of the trailers.
Yeah, so, and in a clip too that they released.
There's a lot. So I watched these trailers, and it's crazy how comic books work, right?
Yeah.
Because I watched these the first set of trailers early on, and I was like, oh, this looks cool. But then I read the stories.
Yeah.
And then you watch the trailers again, and you can be like, oh, but that's, and oh, and that. Yep. It just is a more rewarding and enriching experience, because you find out, without too many spoilers, that Hellboy's called back to Osiris, called back to England by the Osiris Club, because they're going to go on what they call the Wild Hunt, which is, on occasion in England, random giants just get loose.
Yeah.
And so they have to band together in a kind of like wooey kind of way, and just go and just they go giant hunting. And it's played up like if they're hunting deer or they're hunting anything else. It's like, just like we go on these hunts like this. Here's a picture from the hunt from 1935. Here's a picture, like we do this.
Yeah.
And so he's brought into there for that, but we'll also find out that the Queen of Blood is being raised by Guru
Garage?
Guru Garage?
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We're mispronouncing these things.
Goulash.
Yeah.
Goulash. He who has a bone to pick with Hellboy.
Yeah.
And he wants to get this blood goddess there. Morgan Le Fay shows up.
Yeah.
And she informs Hellboy that he's the last descendant of King Arthur and the rightful king of England.
Yeah.
And meaning that he's the only person that could combat Nimue and her hellish army, and that he will be able to, once he pulls Excalibur out, he'll be able to command the legion of undead British soldiers.
Yeah, so he'll be able
That's
to.
very specific, but I just did that. I did
it's a specific market.
Yeah, he'll be able to command essentially all of the fallen knights of the Arthurian legend. Like every single person, warrior that has died in England, he's going to be able to resurrect. And the reason why also he's able to do that is because his mother, who is a witch, Sarah Hughes, she has relations to Arthur.
Yeah,
That's
she
where
was one of the last
comes
descendants of the Pendragon.
Pendulette.
Yeah, Pendragon. Yeah.
But I think one of the coolest points of the story, and one that I want to focus on for a little bit, is this idea that first of all, Hellboy's constantly getting put in these positions where he's told that his destiny is to do X, Y, and Z, and he's constantly fighting against that.
Yeah.
They put him in these fatalistic situations, and he does not dig that at all. So what I like about this is that early on in the book, he sees a bunch of giants.
Yeah.
And they kind of cut away. They don't show you exactly what goes down between him and these giants.
Yeah.
And so they eventually are like, you need to pull out the sword, Excalibur. And he's like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not about that. Stop telling me I need to do it. I'm not about it. And eventually he's able to have a conversation where he's like, I know that all this sounds crazy and the whole thing about the sword sounds crazy, but I met some giants earlier and I grabbed the sword and I killed the hell out of all of them.
Yeah.
He was like, and I liked it. He was like, and now to hear that I'm supposed to pull out this sword, like everything is lining up, and enjoyed that way too much. Like, I hacked and slashed those giants way too much. Fast forward to the trailer, there's a shot of him with a sword attacking a bunch of giants.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, we're going to get like this whole like giant slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's R-rated, this film. Yeah. So I'm like, I hope they go all the way with it.
So I've been keeping up with this movie like hardcore, and I've listened to people that have gone to test screenings and a bunch of stuff, and there's definitely saying that there is a lot of incredible bloody violence, and you can even tell like there is a scene where it's pretty obvious it's Nimue and HellBoy are making out, and there's just blood. And I'm like, again, so metal. But like you can definitely tell that in like a featurette they also released that they are pulling straight from the comics. Like there are going to be like frame for frames that are exactly like The Wild Hunt, or one of my favorite stories that's definitely getting featured a little bit is HellBoy in Mexico, which is getting a little bit. Which is awesome, and you get to see HellBoy wrestle a vampire. You know, that's gonna be awesome. You know, so again, like there, like the things like that. Have you seen that in the trailer? That is a really big point that Neil Marshall, the director, is going for, is like showing these really iconic frames brought to life even more so than they were in the Del Toro films. And I'm so excited for that.
Do you think the idea of making a movie where it is shot for shot, certain panels from the comics, beneficial, or could it be a little bit of a problem with the source material? Because I saw Shazam and it was straight up Jeff Johns Shazam.
Yeah.
So you know what it is? I think that these comic book movies ultimately, obviously the first goal is to make money, second goal is to entertain, but somewhere in between that first and second should be a breadcrumb trail to the comics.
Yeah.
I think that you should be introducing these things to people who feel like they don't have the patience or the understanding of these characters enough to want to engage in longer form storytelling of these characters. So if you can accurately portray what makes the comics work in a film, you can lead those breadcrumb trails so when someone picks up a book, because I don't know necessarily if someone saw Hellboy 2004 and picked up a Hellboy book, if they would be like, oh, this is my bag. Like, what I dug from the movie is what I dig from the comics. So if you create a disconnect that's too wide, where the movies don't look like the comics in general, people will just abandon the one that they didn't like.
It was nice seeing a lot of the DNA in the film, you know, from its source material. Because Logan is one of my all-time favorite comic book movies. Might be like top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing about that movie is this: Old Man Logan is a completely different book.
Yes.
And the only thing it really has in common with Old Man Logan is they're both old. That's it.
Right.
That is it.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, I thought Logan was a much better story than Old Man Logan, so it was nice to see something that improved on something that was okay.
Yeah, look at Civil War. Look at Civil War. You know, the scale of that is dramatically smaller than it was in the comic books.
I mean, Ant-Man's in there.
Yeah, right
there.
Yeah. My boy Ant-Man made the Avengers poster.
His
first
Finally.
Congratulations to the biggest little guy right there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh man.
But I'm very excited to, in my opinion, see visuals that I have always wanted to see be brought to life in a very metal Game of Thrones, because Neil Marshall worked on 2 very iconic episodes of Game of Thrones, to be brought with that style and pizzazz and grit. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, because Nimue's whole deal is that she went crazy trying to get the same dragon, the Adru Jahad.
Well, yes, but the important thing also is that in the Fury, she is the vessel.
Oh,
for the Adru Jahad.
Okay, so they got the vessel and the key.
Yes, yeah, she essentially becomes it.
Oh, wow.
And actually, there's like, it's a very big thing where in the comics, they make this allude that Nimue is like this very all-powerful thing.
Right.
But she's kind of silent. Like, she's sort of kind of like, in a way, like the hidden weapon that like people just sort of like talk about, but you never really like see the power of it. You know, she's kind of like Snoke.
Okay.
You know, because Snoke, I feel like in the Star Wars movies is always hyped up like he's like the craziest, like, oh my god, he's gonna wreck everybody.
Right.
But then finally when we see him, I'm sorry to spoil The Last Jedi if you haven't seen it, but immediately he gets chopped up and killed and we never see him fight or do anything.
Yeah, he was only half as good in that second film.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I'm really excited to see this new take on Nimue, but I have heard in the test screenings we do get to see her body parts that are chopped up that are in boxes.
Wow,
and because that's the thing is that Nimue is also considered the most powerful witch that was part of that tribe. In the movies and also in the comic, and essentially the other witches of England were like, girl, you so crazy, we need to chop you up and throw you away because you're gonna just keep coming back together
as you do,
and if we don't lock you up in boxes, like you're just gonna keep forming back and causing havoc, and we can't deal with that at all. So yeah, no, I absolutely
so they literally instead of just like putting her, like burying her as is, they kept cutting her up. She kept regenerating, and so then they cut her up and then put her in a box and locked all those pieces in the box. Yeah, they probably should have burned the box too.
Right? Yeah, but that's what Guru Garash is looking for is all of her pieces. So if apparently,
he's in the trailer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he is. But apparently, like that's like a thing. You're gonna see her like bloody, disgusting limbs in boxes, and I'm like so hype for that.
Let's talk a little bit about Alice and HellBoy in this film. So Alice is in this film. Yeah, like you said, this was a child that HellBoy was saved when she was younger. Yeah, and she also has some sort of mystical background as well, right? Because in the Wild Hunt, they reach back up, and it's been quite some time. Yeah, and I don't think that they both aged appropriately.
So it's very interesting. So she is found as a baby in 1955, but the Wild Hunt, I believe, takes place in the 90s or in at least the 2000s, maybe. So my theory is that because she was raised by fairies, they endoused her with some sort of like, slow aging, right, magic of some sort.
The residualness of being around magic might have, rubbed off on us.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to see if this is something they continue on in the movie, because the way that they've cast Sasha Lane, who I love as an actress. She was in American Honey and in a bunch of other indie movies I love, but she's very different from the Alice Moynihan in the comics.
No, she is.
Yeah, because Alice Moynihan in the comics is a very Irish, a beautiful lady who has got red hair and is very Celtic and very much so. But in this new movie, she does not look like that at all.
Kind of like a little bit of a badass. Like she looks like she has a chip on her shoulder.
Yeah, and she's got like a really cool brass like knuckle ring thing, which I never was in the comics, and I'm very excited to see how that works out.
Do you think they play up this I saved you as a baby and now I want to date you thing?
So I've heard through reports that is not a thing. Okay.
It is a tough sell to some people.
Yes. Yeah, and I wish it was a thing, to be honest, because it's really cute. If you look at the Comic-Con footage, Sasha Lane talks a lot about how she's like, I just wanted to stroke HellBoy's chest all the time because of the chest hair, and I was really into that. So I was like, oh, does that mean like they have a thing? And but it's interesting, actually. In a most recent poster they released online, there's apparently a shot of HellBoy holding Alice in his arms. Okay. So I've also heard reports that he makes a point to say that Sasha makes some sort of like, I have a thing for you advances, and he says, I cannot date a human.
Oh wow, that's
because
big,
I'm a demon. Yeah. And that might be the reason why he feels some sort of very obvious sexual tension with Nimue, because she's not really a human.
Yeah,
she's
it's not breaking his rule.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see.
Yeah, but they are going to be leaning towards that King Arthur stuff.
Oh yeah.
And with the trailer and with the stuff in the Wild Hunt, the one word that we continuously use on here is metal, and that's exactly what it is. There's footage of him riding that dragon through like the undead army,
right? And which could mean that he's riding him away.
Yes. Which means that she got her wish. That means that Jovovich got her wish.
Yeah, or not, because maybe that's not what she wanted.
That kind of, and maybe it's because it's what happens in the other films, but that seems to me more like a dream sequence, or like one day you will be the one to, because that happens a lot in those movies. But the only time you see him in fully horned and on fire is when they're like, and you will be the one to,
like it's a prophecy, foreshadowing.
Yeah, so I can see her like whispering this in his ear, and he can see all that there. But like we were talking about, there's a definitive direction that they're trying to go into. So I have some words here from makeup designer Joel Harlow, who said he wanted to make the monsters and the world of Hellboy as believable within the context of the world that they inhabit. This is something that you were speaking towards.
Yeah.
For the horned version of Hellboy, Harlow chose to make that version an amped up version of the regular Hellboy. Say we created a look that was more amped up with facial features to make him more Hellboy. We gave him a larger jaw, a heavier brow, a vibrant yellow eye look, larger teeth, and of course extremely large horns. And I agree. You see all those things on him. He does look more monster-esque.
Yeah.
They almost prettied him up for the Del Toro film.
When we brought up the point about him holding her in his arms, for some reason that reminds me of like old school horror movie monsters.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
When I'm thinking that, I'm like, that's like the first thing that pops in my head.
Right. Well, it could be like a nod to like Frankenstein or Dracula or any of those things.
Leave it to them to do the Dark Universe better than the guys who can.
Well, and again, I think my boy Del Toro also could have done. That's essentially what Shape of Water was a low key version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. So, but like I honestly, a lot of people are very negative towards the new look of Hellboy. Yeah. And I'm particularly a really big supporter and lover of it because another thing that bothered me so much with the original movies, now that I've seen what could have been, is I feel like they never made Hellboy look buff enough. Yeah. And now I'm like, that dude would scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, he looks like a brute. He looks like a brute. Harbor looks like a brute.
Yeah.
Should we be excited for the idea that this is rated R now?
Yeah.
Does that give this a license to enrich it, or are they just going to pat this with a bunch of F-bombs and...
I hope it's not going to be like that, because in a post-Logan world, you want to have like a nice balance of horror, you want to have a nice balance of violence and adult content.
Yeah.
But not make it be like, hey guys, boobies.
Yeah.
Blood, here's the blood.
Yeah. No, like the thing that is another really important thing that's happening in this movie is we're finally getting the featured live-action debut of Ben Dynamo.
Yes.
And Ben Dynamo is a very underappreciated member of the BPRD, and he's a character who essentially is a Marine that goes on this big mission where he has to go to, I think it's South America, and he gets essentially all of his Marine army mates get killed by this cult who are worshiping a jaguar spirit, and the jaguar spirit takes over Ben.
Yes.
And I think you cannot do a PG-13 movie of the jaguar transformation scene. Like the fact that even in just that trailer, we saw his nails like ripping off of his skin, and even though like the way that they're doing the Ben Dynamo design of him as the were-jaguar, some people were like, "Oh, this is just Jungle Book." Like to me, I feel like it's as accessible you can make it, without also losing the grotesqueness of it. And that's the same way I also feel with his facial design, because some people don't like that he's not scarred up enough and you don't see like his teeth. And,
Arbor is as cuddly as Baloo.
Right, exactly.
There's actually that once that character was placed in the film, it actually caused a little bit of an uproar.
Yeah.
Because our boy Francis, Ed Skrein was cast, and people were like, "Oh, this is whitewashing again."
Yeah.
And so he was all like, "Oh, I'm leaving."
Yeah.
He left, and so now we do have an Asian actor for the role. So
yeah, we do. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but it's our dude from Hawaii 5-0 who why can't I remember his name? But it'll come to me in a second. But he's great. Daniel Dae Kim. Yeah, yes. Yeah, Daniel Dae Kim. Yeah, Sorry, Daniel. Daniel Dae Kim. I actually think like they should have just gone with his casting to begin with, because he looks like Ben Dynamo. Yeah. Like just the way his facial features are. It's just so weird,
like the idea that like now that Ed leaves, then they choose to make him comic actor. Like they've just done that from the beginning.
I know, but what's so interesting is, to market this movie, they did a lot of interviews with the producers, and they just straight up said like, yeah, we made like a stupid mistake, and I think one of the really interesting changes they made that isn't accurate to the comics is that Ben Dynamo in the comics is Japanese American.
Yeah.
But in the movie, he's going to be British. So I guess that's why they were thinking of casting Ed Skrein, because they wanted just like another, like, everybody's from Britain and they work in the BPRD.
Which
that from London.
Yeah.
Which that worked for their Asian markets that we were just talking about earlier, right?
Right.
Like, I wonder why Asian people are not coming to see our films. Well, maybe you keep them in the movies.
Right, and especially because now we've had Crazy Rich Asians, we can clearly see that there are, lots of incredible Asian actors that that Hollywood isn't giving enough attention to. Mm-hmm. And also that there's Asian actors that can have different kinds of accents. So, like, it doesn't, like, matter.
You can be from anywhere,
Yeah. Because, like, I don't know, just... That was a casting thing that just drove me nuts. And apparently something that Daniel Day Kim said on set is that the makeup on his face was actually was modeled for Ed Skrein.
Oh, wow.
And so it didn't really fit his face properly, and that also might be why we don't see through the cheek.
Yeah.
Because I guess they had to modify it really fast.
Just to fit him, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that's something that a lot of fans are bothered by, but to me, I'm just like, whatever, it's okay. Like, he looks good, and he's, he looks like Ben Dynamo, he walks like Ben Dynamo.
Yeah.
Good. It's fine.
I mean, they're making a bunch of changes. Hopefully all good. Some are going to be good. Some are going to be bad. Some obviously people are going to have take umbrage with.
Yeah.
But with you sitting in the director's chair, what do you want to see in this remake? What will make this movie for you?
Well, for me, the thing that I really want to see is a HellBoy that is completely unapologetic of what he is. I don't think I'm going to get that in this, which is fine.
Right.
But that is the kind of HellBoy that I love, is a HellBoy that feels the weight of the world, but is also like, this is me, and I don't necessarily 100% want to change that about me.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that cocky confidence is coming a little bit through in this movie, but I'm not sure I'm going to get it. The other thing that I'm very excited about is I'm finally getting the movie version of my favorite HellBoy character, which is Lobster Johnson.
Yeah, we gotta talk about my boy Lobster Johnson.
Yeah, so as someone who loves the Phantom and lots of like serial 1940s style comics.
The Phantom, the Spirit.
Yeah.
Who's the other one? The Shadow? Is there
the Shadow. Yeah, the Shadow.
Yeah, Doc Savage. Yeah.
Savage. I love that sort of like pulp character who's like ready to like kick some Nazi butt and some mobsters, and
where literally everything is exposition. They open the door and they're like, "Hey, Doctor So-and-so, I'm so-and-so, and I'm here to stop you from doing so-and-so."
Yeah, and I am beyond excited to finally get a movie version of that. I would like to make a prediction.
Oh, go ahead.
So I don't think that they're going to use the Torch of Liberty in this movie, and that Lobster Johnson is going to replace the Torch of Liberty in the origin of HellBoy scene, because that's clearly happening in the movie.
I did like how that was described in the trailer. Where they're like, some great evil is going to come and destroy all the world and whatever. And he's like, oh, when's that happen? And she's like, oh, you're already here.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that Lobster Johnson is going to be the one that's there.
So he's going to give him the Samaritan?
Yeah, well, the claw. He's going to give him the claw. Yeah, because he brands his enemies with the claw.
He has a claw on his hand. He brands people.
Yeah.
With the claw.
Yeah, and it's badass.
It's like the Phantom Ring, I think, when you punch somebody in the head.
Yeah.
The mark stays on you.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that you're no good. Ne'er-do-well out there in the streets.
It's so cool. I'm so excited, and Thomas Hayden Church is playing him.
Sandman's gonna be in there.
Yeah. And
did they say in what capacity Lobster Johnson would be? Are we gonna see like old, real kind of like pulpy adventures in a Shadow esque thing? Is this gonna be something that, because normally HellBoy, this is somebody that he looks up to. This is a character that he wants to emulate, like just a good old fashioned hero taking out Nazis, and he was literally born in that. That was the first conflict that he had to deal with there. So I'm excited for the character, just because you need to understand the medium well to parody it.
Yeah.
And they parody pulp characters in Lobster Johnson
so well.
It's a level of brilliance in understanding. Like,
yeah.
You can only make these jokes because you understand this so much. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that translates into the film.
Yeah.
In relation to what you're saying about the whole aspect of the pulpy heroes, what I want to see in the film is like a bit more of an emphasis on like his early days, a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But still, have it be in the 40s, do some stuff in there, see what they could do, utilize that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these movies, they'll do stuff in the 1940s, but it's not that accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also, in relationship to that, one of the things that I love about the HellBoy comics is that they're a very like chill, somber kind of film noir style comics. Yes. And I want that feeling. I don't think I'm gonna get that from this movie, nope. And that's okay. Yeah. But I love that sort of moments where they're like, "All right, guys, we're going into the boardroom and we're gonna look through the slideshow," like and just long exposition like spiels. I don't think we're gonna get that. My other thing that I actually briefly mentioned before is I'm very nervous about this interpretation of Professor Broom.
Yes, played by Ian McShane.
Yes, who was a friend of John Hurt. And that's why he took the role.
Awesome. That John Hurt voice, man. You watch those movies, like,
so good.
He's just
go
like,
bump in the night.
Yeah, I was just like, this guy's great.
It's so good. But yeah, so one of the things that's very confusing is that in the trailer, when they showed the flashback scene of HellBoy, coming to the world, Ian McShane looks exactly the same as he does then in the present. Yeah. So I'm like, okay. Like, that was an odd choice.
He also doesn't look like a professor, and I don't know what a professor should look like, but he just doesn't look like a professor.
Well, he doesn't have, like, the cute glasses, and he doesn't look old. Right. He would be 103.
That does a lot of math there.
Yeah.
Clean living.
Yeah. So, that doesn't make any sense to me. No. Unless they're like, he took some immortal, like, juice or something. Like,
he seems to be a little bit more of a hard-ass toy.
Oh, yeah.
Than old Broom.
Yeah, he seems a lot more like, like, I found you and I raised you, but I want you to do better, so you're not doing better enough.
Get up.
Like, get
up off the couch,
your shit together. Stop eating pizza and pancakes and get out there and do it. But there's also this whole conflict where HellBoy in the trailer is saying that, you raised me as like a weapon.
Yes.
And you acknowledge that.
Yeah, I did hear that. And he is a weapon pointed at, I guess the malicious paranormal entities that are out there in the world.
Yeah.
But it is a case of that. It reminds me a little bit of Captain Marvel, where the idea is not that the character is a character at all, but a weapon, and all we need to care about is in which direction that weapon gets pointed.
Right.
And hoping that we're pointing it in the right direction.
Yeah.
With that there. How do you think that this movie can stand out from the rest of the modern comic book movies? And we also have to add the fact, because that side there speaks to me of this idea that you also got to remember this is the same year that Endgame is going to drop.
Not even the same year. A week before.
Yeah, a week before, yes. It used to have its own month, and now a week before, it'll be dropping with one of the biggest weighted comic book movies in the history of the world.
It's going to be rough.
This movie was originally, so this was something I was a little low-key pissed about. So, non-disclosure, my birthday's in January.
Okay.
And originally this movie was slated for a January release. I do
remember that, yes.
And I was like, am I going to get a HellBoy movie on my birthday? And then I did.
Spoilers, she did not.
I did not, and I was very sad. So, I love Lionsgate for their brash confidence that they feel like this movie can make money. Mm-hmm. But I'm also one of those nerds that checks the seating and ticket sales of my showing.
Yeah.
I'm one of very few people that are going, and I'm very.
So I'm gonna check mine.
Yeah, I'm very, very sad to see that. But I think the thing that will make or break this movie is we have not found out what the budget is for it.
Okay.
And a lot of people have said from behind the scenes things that the only reason this movie got made is because it was under a certain budget which Lionsgate was like, okay, sure,
do whatever you want.
We're okay with throwing money at this
Blood
thing.
Queen got it.
Oh,
yeah.
No,
done.
By the way, I just saw my ticket showing.
Yeah, you're one of 5 people that are going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, but again, I think it's important for us all to realize they made the very bold decision to make this movie rated R. That's a hard sell right there. It's going to be in the middle of Shazam, and Shazam, that was one of the things, is they marketed this HellBoy movie as being in IMAX. Shazam is taking most of the IMAX theaters. Oh, man. So I was, really good. Yeah, and I was so excited to see this movie in IMAX, and as a New Yorker who hates the 42nd Street AMC, and that being my only IMAX choice, I was like, well, nope, this isn't happening. Right. So, I was really disappointed to see that, a lot of the movie theaters were siding with Shazam as being the moneymaker. Yeah. And that, and listen, like, I get it. It's that DC money is real sweet. Like, if you want to suck from the teat of DC, I get it. Like, I get it.
The deceit.
Yeah. But I really feel like it's a niche market. It's an R-rated movie. It's not a big star, just like the same situation with Ron Perlman. It's going to be a hard R. This is not even Deadpool. Like, Deadpool was hard, but it was funny violence. Yeah. This isn't even going to be funny violence. Right. So that's what I'm very nervous about. And I'm also, the make or break is going to be the budget and the critical response. Yeah. And I know already so many movie critics that I follow and I love that are just going to hate this movie. Oh, man. And I said this to everyone, and I'm going to say it here. This is a movie that's not going to be for everyone, but this is a movie that's for me. Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to feel that way, and I'm hopefully those are the people that are going to champion it to at least succeed in the ancillary market. So
yeah, I'm going to answer what I want to see in the remake with what can how dope Hellboy 2019 can stand different from everything else. Yeah. I'm going to need a certain level of confidence in the world that Hellboy exists in. I feel like even though we had those two movies, they never showed the broadness of scope that this is the things that they deal with in New York are things that deal with all over the world. Right. That the idea that the Hellboy could be operating in one place, but other BPRD members could be operating somewhere else. Yeah. Like, I would love to see the full scope of this, because if you can come into this with a swagger that says, "Oh, this is only half of our world," like you have no idea, and it almost will dare you to want to get in deeper. Right. Whereas I feel like sometimes with these complex worlds, they try to shortcut the world. Right. So they can just give you the basis, you got it, you figured it out. This, I want you to leave with questions of going, wait, and that does what? And wait, so they have an agent that can do, it should leave more questions than answers. I feel like once you're done with Hellboy 2004, you're done. Like,
yeah,
unfortunately. The story ends. There's not really much to go on from there. But I'm excited for this.
I am too, in all honesty. I mean, I feel the trailer, the initial trailer, it was kind of, I remember I was, telling Dalin about this when it first happened. I'm like, I don't know how this makes me feel. And then I kept watching it again. Yeah. Monet was stuck in my head. It kind of had that for me. Yeah. And then I watched it again. I'm like, I think I can like this. Yeah. I think I'll be fine. Yeah. We're in good hands.
And I'm one of those people that believes that from a marketing standpoint, if you don't make a first impression that's great with your first trailer, then you suck. Yeah. And side note, I'm also a really big supporter of Alita Battle Angel. Right. I love that movie. The first trailer was terrible. Yeah, it was. But the movie itself was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And it constantly makes me so frustrated, especially from someone who also edits, that they constantly hire these trailer houses that are just, producing crap. Yeah. And this is an example of Lionsgate hiring a really crap trailer house to make that trailer, and I feel like a lot of people are going to base their first impressions or their overall impressions of the movie on that first impression of that trailer.
Such a weird exercise. Like, you would think that these people would be in the bag for these movies or have seen it to know what the best beats are to take out of it. No. But they literally just make things up. Like, how do I want to sell this? Yeah. I point to the Bohemian Rhapsody Suicide Squad thing. Talk about Suicide Squad again. Oh, yeah. You see that and it almost looks so artful. Yeah. And you're like, we're going to get this, like, weird, artful, but the bad guys are the good guys kind of movie. Like, almost tragic and Shakespearean. And nope.
Narrator, we would not.
No, narrator. And then Without Me by Eminem starts to play.
It's funny because when Shazam came out, they prefaced it, I think the second trailer, it was said to Eminem's My Name Is. Yeah. And that's not at all the kind of humor, kind of tone. So I understand why. Because he says his name. Ha hunka hunka. But it's like, no.
Yeah. Stop trying to take shortcuts. Just learn the material, learn what's funny, and work with that.
Yeah, well, and especially, like, even with the posters for this movie, they have the worst taglines.
Aren't they all, like, one hell of a hero?
Well, no, the worst one was, so the first poster for this movie was beautiful. Like, it's a shirtless shot of HellBoy, and there's, like, flames, and his eyes are glowing, and then it says Legendary AF.
Yes,
I remember that. I remember that. You were doing so good.
Yeah, I remember that.
You had one job.
Yeah. Is that more of the studio, just kind of?
Yeah.
The kids say AF, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, no, and that is a marketing team who is so worried about this rated R, bloody, niche movie making money that they are just like, we gotta just throw the lamest thing out there so the kids will dig it.
The kids like the Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of reminds me of some of that Venom stuff, because I remember Venom went out of his way to be like, it's not what everyone's superhero movie. It's not gonna be everybody's cup of tea. It's not your, not your granddad's superhero movie.
Like a turd in the wind.
That almost becomes its own cliche of saying it's not gonna be your granddad's. So you don't want to fall into that.
Well, that's marketing itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you end up just falling into that hamster wheel of the same cliches being thrown out of like, this changes the genre and it flips it on its head and it's not your grandfather's superhero movie, and it's like, my grandpa had great superhero movies. There's absolutely nothing wrong with. There's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things. The Spirit, the Phantom, I dig all that stuff.
Yeah, that's my cup of tea. So,
but I seriously dig it. But we will be reviewing this film on this cast, so I'm going to see it. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
Your opening day. This is
so I'm going Thursday night.
Yeah. Thursday is the new opening day, man.
Yeah,
I'm trying to tell you people, bro. If you see a worldwide release, odds are there's theaters in your area that will show it on the Thursday before.
Yeah, so I'm really low key hoping I can find a 4DX screening, because I need to have my seats move
immersed
with HellBoy, and I need to smell HellBoy.
Okay.
I need to
smell boy.
Because David Harper wrote a hilarious tweet where he said, like, so I've heard of, that there's like 4DX screenings, and I've smelled the smell of HellBoy, and it's quite nice.
I dig that. You gotta be fully immersed in the experience.
You do.
I'm not gonna lie though. Going into this, I will have been the most excited I have been for a HellBoy movie.
Yeah.
Because now I have the baggage of the research that I've done, the stories that I like. I'm gonna be looking for more specific things.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I think anytime you find yourself, if you are a fan of, let's say, the Marvel and the DC, the Superman and the Batman, anytime you find out there's a comic book property coming out and you have a little bit of a hesitance towards it, I would say go to that source material.
Right.
Go to what made this property, what made people want to give a chance to this property, and stuff. Tangent. I was able to watch Umbrella Academy or even things like Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
And there's so much their source material that whether or not you like it or not really doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't. It exists on the strength of its identity.
Right.
And you can choose to want it or not. That's the kind of swagger I need HellBoy to have. And I understand that money's on the line.
Yeah.
But you have to come in this, like, we're doing something cool over here. If you're not in on it, then that's fine. Because we're going to keep doing this cool thing.
Yeah.
And people will naturally be like, I want to see that cool thing. What's that cool thing going on over there?
Yeah.
And you can end up bringing, but if you start to beg people, they can feel the neediness.
Yeah.
And they're just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go see something else.
I really want to encourage your viewers to give the clips that the Lionsgate has released a shot.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, I actually feel like they're better trailers than the trailers.
They are.
Because like hearing the Osiris Club mentioned, and then hearing like there be like a tour of like the Osiris Club room, and then hearing HellBoy say like, I want to put on the deer head, like all of those things are just
they
like,
say freaking, they go because we got a giant problem here in England. And he's like, okay, what kind of problem? The guy's like, giants.
it's literally giants.
We have a giant rabbit. And when he said that, I had just read it, so I'm all like, I'm connecting the dots. Everything's connected.
So it's self-respect towards the source material.
Yeah.
Mike is good. Yeah,
Mike is supposed to be on there, right? Helping this move along. And I wanted to end things by saying that there was actually a little bit of an interview done by, I think, Sci-Fi Wire with Mike, and he says that it's hard for him to watch some of these adaptations. Yeah. That they feel divorced from his original
material.
Yeah. And I can understand when something's that close, when you're working on it that close, and you literally are the last, checkpoint.
Right. Yeah.
That when someone goes, yeah, well, that's not necessary. Like, what do you mean it's not necessary? I spent 3 months writing that, and then I conceived it, and I thought about how it would work in the world. And
I always go back to Eric Larson with his. He had a Savage Dragon cartoon.
He did,
and they said, "Oh, we need you to have this, this, and this." Yeah, but I'm the guy who created this. Oh, we don't care.
Right.
And it's a shame.
And you have to pick. You have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Do you want to open the gates for way more people to view your medium than ever before? But in the same sense, are they viewing the right version of your medium?
Right.
We talk about the Man of Steel stuff, and it's like Man of Steel made more Superman fans, but did they make more of the right Superman fans?
Correct.
Yeah.
They're those Superman fans, and that's fine. Everyone can have their fandom, but you don't necessarily want people to latch onto the wrong or the mischaracterizations of certain people, where they're like, what if somebody's like, oh, I'm definitely gonna go see the third HellBoy because I completely dig the Liz Sherman love stuff, and I know I'm gonna get in the third one, and it's like, nah, bro, that's not even. Not only you're not getting in the third one, don't look at the books because you're not getting them.
You're not getting it there. No.
Yeah, so you have to be really careful on what you choose to magnify.
Yeah.
In these senses, because you should be magnifying what makes the comics or the original source material great, because then it'll just lead people right back.
Yeah, or you can also go to the comics to find the things that probably inspired the things in the movies that you liked.
Yeah.
Like, if you really dug Hellboy and Liz as a thing, look at Hellboy and Alice.
Yeah.
They're a very, very different couple, but they also have that powerful, like, relationship romance.
And in comics in general, look to, like we said before again, with Swamp Thing and Abigail.
Yeah.
These stories of almost forbidden love, love locked between two different worlds.
Yeah.
And that's all great. But you guys got to make sure that you guys are here and listen to the Hellboy review. But it was an honor to go through this Hellboy character analysis. What a hell of a character! You don't get staying power like this without care and attention being placed.
Yeah, 30 years, man.
Yeah, you don't get that without quality assurance. Mike Mignola working on it and giving his love to it. It becoming almost an obsession that brings the character to a close at a point. Like we're talking about him, he gets a definitive ending. And just like all the stories of old, we need to get to that good beginning first.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can get to that ending.
Yeah.
But hopefully this sticks the landing, and that's what we're all hoping
And then
for
we
here.
can get a cinematic ending finally.
That's it. Cool. We can lay our Hellboy to rest.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be a hell of a thing. But
no pun intended.
Yeah. if you guys like this episode, we got so many more in the library, in the backlogs, as we like to say. And you can go and I want to thank you guys for listening so far into this one. But if you want to listen to all of our previous episodes, you can go wherever podcasts are found. That's Podbean, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, the Apple Podcast app on any iDevice. It's already pre-installed. I don't know how they do that.
Nowadays you have it, yeah.
Yeah, it's already pre-installed on your device. So just look up the Major Issues Podcast. But if all of that's too hard, go to Google, search Major Issues Podcast. We're literally the first ones that pop right up. And it's the newest and hottest, greatest way to talk about the things that come to comic books and comic book media. So if you guys want to reach out to us, you can always email at comicbookclick@gmail.com. Facebook.com/comicbookclick, Instagram @comicbookclick, or use the hashtag comicbookclick to talk about the newest, hottest, latest, and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. We're available on Twitter at Major Issues CBC. And once you put these podcasts into the ether, they go everywhere. They're like on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're on websites I've never known before that have picked them up. So literally Google Major Issues Podcast and you will find us there. And if you guys want to do us a bit of a favor, leave a hell of a review for this particular podcast. Listen, stars 4 through 1, they don't even work. Don't worry about them. Just go straight for the 5.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, go straight for the 5. And it does, if you're able to rate and review us, especially give us a 5-star review, it does 2 beautiful things. One, it tells us what you like and don't like about this, so it helps us improve as podcasters. And 2, it helps us grow our audience so more members of the Clique can find us. I've been to the future, and we do become the latest and greatest thing to come to comic book media. I can't talk more past that, because I might break the time continuum, but I'm telling you, we're on the money. So make sure that you're on the bandwagon before the bandwagon gets too full.
So how Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot again.
Oh my God,
Martha!
Why did you say that name? And don't forget that you can follow our great guest here today. I guess one at a time. Pete.
Well, ladies first.
Oh, so yeah, I'm Dalin. If you want to follow me, I'm at Magic a la Mode on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also look up my various work on /film and leonardmoulton.com.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm at Peter Melnick on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Peter Melnick Podcaster. And you can also check out the Marvelists, available on all iOS and Android devices, much like Comic Book Clique's.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Get on it. Both of these people do tremendous work in the work that we care about. So make sure that you like, share, follow what they're doing, because something tells me this is not going to be the last time they are here in studio. But I am George Serrano, a.k.a. The Don.
I'm Peter Melnick.
And I'm Dalin Rowell.
And this has been our One Hell of a Hero HellBoy characterization podcast. And remember, whether or not your right hand was melded with the right hand of doom, whether you are some amphibian lover just trying to get your love on the other side of that, whether you're some weird clockwork sand Nazi monster,
that's oddly specific.
Very oddly specific. Remember that we're all monsters in our own way. We are the Clique, and you, yes, you are worthy.